all set. So it is a little bit past 7, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. Can I have an acceptance of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Second by Mr. Harris. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye, great. Off to a good start. Walk-ins. Are there any walk-ins here this evening?
Oh,
Seeing none, we'll chug right along to report of the town administrator. Jim?
Evening. Bunch of things on the agenda for tonight. First, water. I gave you an update on the water construction projects from 2 weeks ago that Kevin gave you. We'll be posting that tomorrow after you guys have a chance to read it. The big news is that the replacement of the gate valve in the water main from the man lot tank went off without a hitch. The crews and the department employees were there until after 1 o'clock in the morning last Monday, working on that, but we got it done in time. Mark Cloud, Mark Sakosha, Jim Holloman, and Phil O'Neill were on the site. And Mike, how do you pronounce Mike's last name, Kevin? Quishan was at the plant all night, running the plant, making sure we had sufficient pressure, so
wow.
thanks for them for all that work. Again, it was a big job, they got it done. The work on man lot is progressing to replace that 2,200 feet of main. Since that time, we've done a pretty aggressive flushing program, basically working from the tower out. They've been flushing every day. Depending on how you look at it, the results have been good or bad. I mean, the stuff we're seeing is pretty dark water. We're going to place a couple of videos up tomorrow. We couldn't get them to email to each other today. We're going to post those tomorrow so people can see the kind of results we're getting from the flushing. We're going to do that until we either run out of water or it gets too cold to flush. We're hoping before next spring that the entire town will get flushed.
Before next spring.
Well, we're hoping to get it done before the winter sets in, but it's really going to be water and weather dependent. So if we have to go and do some more in the spring, we can do some more in the spring, but
So that's a lot of pipes.
Yep. They're every day they're just banging away at it, and they're really doing a good job. They're following the plan, and so we make sure we're not ever flushing from bad areas to good areas. We always just keep expanding and going. I showed Mara and Karen one of the videos today. I can show you guys afterwards. I mean, it's black coming out. By the time they're done flushing, it's back to white water. So we think we're going to have some real good results from this.
What's the reservoir level at?
Pretty high.
Yeah, high. I think we're only like 14 inches down. There's still plenty of water. It's just starting to show that old road.
Mm-hmm.
It's just starting to peek through. So far, the water's holding up. And we'll see how things go. The water's looking.
Good. Now, are people getting brown water when we do the flushing?
We haven't received a lot of complaints, whether they're not getting it or they're just saying, okay, they're flushing, I'm going to get brown water, and they're not reporting it. But we haven't seen a huge spike in the number of complaints about brown water since we started the flushing.
Good.
Great. Thank you.
Athletic fields, so far so good. If you go over there, you can really see the outline of the stadium field at this point. The bed for the track is down. The concrete retaining wall for the home stands is up. We're pouring the concrete retaining wall for the visitor stands today, so that should be up by today or tomorrow. The light poles for the track and field are scheduled to go in this week. The next two big milestones, next week they will begin putting down the pavement for the track. That takes 30 days to cure before you can put down the actual track surface. That's scheduled for next week, and then the week of the 30th, the turf company is scheduled to begin to start work on actually putting down the turf field on that field.
9:30 or 10:30?
9:30, September 30th, so 2 weeks.
Will they leave a section of the track out so they can travel in the infield? Or will they do the whole track and have to make a bridge over it?
They'll put down the pavement, they won't put down the track surface itself. That won't go down. It's at least 30 days to cure.
Oh,
You gotta get all the oil out of the pavement, so it's at least 30 days to cure. And then the field will be done before they come out and they actually spray on the track surface. But the field will be done. So that's so far so good on that. We are just waiting we've given the contractor the final designs for the amenities building, and we're waiting for him to get back on a price with that. As we mentioned earlier, we cut out some of the fancier things, and the savings right now between what we had bid before and this is in the neighborhood of $100,000.
Okay.
Right, but the number's still outrageous.
Yeah, but it's municipal construction. It's in line with what we've been paying, Tony. Unfortunately, we just end up paying a lot more.
Can we get some of the details on that? I mean, because I know we've talked about, does it include plumbing? Does it include
Yep.
the fixtures and all that other stuff that goes with it? Because it essentially is how many square feet building is it?
I have to go back and look.
Yeah, so
But the
maybe-
the building that will be built will have all the facilities, will have the bathrooms in it, be all plumbed, and it actually includes equipment, which the modular building did not include. So refrigerators, I think we added an ice maker, they wanted an ice maker, so those will actually be in there.
But it's still
Yeah.
$500,000 or something?
4 and change. 4 and change. Similar along that lines, at town meeting, we were instructed to do a facility study for the town. That's a good idea. The bid opening is tomorrow, to have someone come out and do an evaluation of all the buildings that have not been recently evaluated. So it wouldn't include the Cushing, or the Hadley, or the old gates, but all the other schools, all the other buildings in town will be included. Funding for that is penciled in for the fall town meeting. We got to see what the bid comes in. As of right now, I don't think we've received a bid, but that's not unusual. Usually we get them in the morning of the bids at noon time tomorrow, so we'll see where that comes in, and then hope to fund that at the fall town meeting and get started on that study. Dredging, we finished phase 1 of the dredge. We've not expended all our funds, so we're going to go to what's called Area B. It's about 600 feet south and 200 feet east of the current dredge, so we're going to keep working down that way. The contractor will be working later and earlier. He's going to work from 5 in the morning to up till 10 o'clock at night, depending upon the tides. We're going to send out notification to Hummerock and all the boaters so they're aware of what's going on. They expect to be completely done by September 30th. So about 2 weeks of dredging, and then we'll be out of money. We'll be as far down the South Rivers as we can get with what we have available. I know everybody's waiting on this, the dog park. Although the dog park is not officially open, I guess we've had a soft opening because people are using it. The amenities are scheduled to in this week, the water bubblers and the barrels and stuff. And I sent you the email, they're going to have a ribbon cutting opening on September 28th at 10 o'clock. So far, the reviews have been very good. I don't know about the dogs, but people are very happy with it. We have seen a lot of people using it, so.
Are dogs invited to the ceremony?
Yeah, be my guest.
Keep them under control.
So I guess it's kind of a soft opening. We haven't really opened it, but people are using it.
Hoping on.
And the reviews have been good.
So that's a Saturday?
Saturday the 28th, so it's a week from this Saturday. We did make some additional improvements to drainage. We're hoping to hit another big rainstorm to make sure that it's all the way it's supposed to be, but we had to have the contractor add some additional drainage. We still had some puddling down there, so they did that this past week. Beaver Dam is continuing. I don't know if you've been out there, but we're replacing the curbing. When the curbing's done, the new sidewalk will go in. Kevin, we got a final date for that?
Estimate of hopefully 2 weeks. We'll have the sidewalk completed, and we have to get on we're getting on the list with Gail Edwards to finish the roadway. Okay. We've already given notice that it's coming up, but it's like scheduling a painter. You never can, talk to pin it down.
Finally, Karen asked for an update on the wind turbine. Karen Canfield, we've completed 2 out of the 3 tests. We had a test scheduled, and the company Epsilon, their testing team was elsewhere doing testing. They weren't able to come in. So at this point, and we can put this on the agenda if you want, we can continue to try to get the correct conditions for the 3rd test, which is what we've contracted for, or we could have them analyze the 2 tests and see what that data tells us. We could have them just go out and do a test on any random night, but it might give us crappy data. My advice at this point is we've gone this far. We might as well get the last data point and get it done and analyze it, and then we'll have the cold weather when people are closed up to discuss it and go over it. But just we haven't had the right conditions and the windmill operating at its correct efficiency to go out and do that 3rd test. So if you want Al to come in, we can have Al come in and do an update, but that's where we are. And that's all I have for tonight.
Could I ask, what is going to be the end result of this? I hate that word, end result, but what are we looking for?
We're looking to see what are the noise levels put out by the turbine. If the
But only on specific wind conditions?
Because we want it to be when it's heading towards that particular neighborhood.
All right.
So when it's going to be the loudest, if you will, for that neighborhood based upon the weather conditions. That's where our testing machines are, that's where our stations are, and that's where our complaints are coming from. So when the wind conditions are such that that area would be the most heavily impacted by any noise from the turbine, that's when we're doing the testing.
And then what?
You take all the testing data, you analyze and you determine whether or not the windmill is operating above or below the threshold set by the state for the noise from the windmill.
All right.
And if it's
Okay.
above, then we go to the operator and we say,
Shut it down or
fix it.
during those, yeah, okay. It just seems like it's taken a very long time to get the exact right conditions.
Well, we had a while this spring where the turbine was not operating correctly. It had a problem with the sensor, so it was not operating, even though the wind was blowing, saying it should be producing this. It was less than that because of some sensor problems, so it was slowing the turbine down. So even though you had the right weather conditions, the turbine wasn't operating as highly as it normally would, so it would have given you a skewed reading.
All right.
So they didn't want to do it when the turbine wasn't operating at its correct efficiency.
So in some ways, it's been less of a nuisance?
I wouldn't opine on that.
I'm just
I'm
asking.
not
what-
there.
No. You're right with your first statement. It's taken a very long time to get this done.
Okay.
Yes.
But we did have the right wind conditions.
Twice?
We've had it twice. We had it a third time when the company was not available to come do the testing. So, that's it for tonight.
Anything else for Jim?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. We'll move right along then. The next item is a proclamation, National Recovery Month. Emery Galvin from Fax is here. Hi, Emery, how are you?
Great, how are you?
How are you? Good seeing you.
Invited my friend John Kimmett from South Shore Peer Recovery to celebrate with us.
Awesome. So, would you like to read it?
I'd be
Stanfield?
very happy to. The Board of Selectmen has this great proclamation, very fancy, and I have
Very
the
fancy.
honor of reading it. Recovery Month Proclamation. It has many whereases. So whereas the town of Scituate dedicated resources to establish a community coalition dedicated to the prevention of substance use disorder, the Scituate Facts Coalition in 2012, which was further recognized by a federal grant in September 2014, whereas the Scituate Facts Coalition implements strategies to reduce rates of substance use among local youth and strengthens collaboration among partners within the community and across the Commonwealth. Whereas South Shore Peer Recovery, a grassroots organization that began when Scituate community members in recovery organized to provide more support for individuals and family members in or seeking recovery, was founded in Scituate in 2015 and opened a recovery center at 51 Cole Parkway in March 2018. Whereas these organizations partner with the Scituate Police Department, Scituate Public Schools, and other municipal stakeholders to reduce stigma and to improve prevention, intervention, treatment, and recovery support for all. Whereas for 30 years, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration has designated September as National Recovery Month to increase awareness and understanding of mental and substance use disorders and celebrate individuals living in recovery. Further, the town of Scituate celebrates the 2019 National Recovery Month theme and joins the Voices for Recovery, Together We Are Stronger, to explore how integrated care, a strong community, sense of purpose, and leadership contributes to effective treatments that sustain the recovery of persons with mental and substance use disorders. The 2019 observance also aims to increase awareness and encourage audiences to take advantage of the increased dialogue around behavioral health needs and increased emphasis on tackling our nation's opioid crisis. Now, therefore, we, the Board of Selectmen for the town of Scituate, do hereby proclaim the month of September 2019 as National Recovery Month. And we have a proclamation signed by
What a mouthful.
Thank you, thanks.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for recognizing all the wonderful work in our community. We wouldn't have the progress that we have seen without all the support from every department in the town, particularly you guys and the police department and the school department, as you mentioned, Karen. It really is, it means a lot to all of us, so I always cry.
I'll just
Tears of
summarize.
joy.
Yeah, I mean, all of us feel the same way. This is just another example of a great department in town that's doing great stuff at a high, high level. This is more than just, you know, our community definitely benefits from it, but the whole state and the whole country is really benefiting from the work that you guys do, and it's God's work, right? I mean, it's It's,
very
we're helping
rewarding,
people,
yeah.
and it's, we're just proud to be able to say that we had a minor, real small
No,
piece in
that's not
doing
true, but
it,
it's
so.
really, it's amazing, the support. So that's not everywhere, so we're very lucky in Scituate to be able to sustain that. And I brought, I shared one with Lorraine, but I'll leave these for you guys, a little progress report.
Oh,
They're all so fancy.
Look how fancy that is in
It's not the press, I just
2019.
picked it up today, so we have made some progress, certainly with reducing youth substance use rates. We've made wonderful progress establishing systems for adults in the community in partnership with the police and the Recovery Community Center and all of Plymouth County Police Chiefs, actually. So really wonderful things are happening. I'll have to come back with my, my long-winded update, but it really is, we're making a difference. We have like numbers to prove it, and families that are healthy and happy now, so.
Right.
It's awesome.
I do
Good
have one
stuff.
question for you. I remember a couple years ago, you gave us this survey that you did in the schools.
Yeah, there's summaries of that in here.
Oh, is it in there?
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so it's great. So we have, since we started, I'll just briefly, for the people that are able to watch, we do surveys in grades 7 through 12. It's a youth risk behavior survey, which is the Centers for Disease Control validated tool. So it's the same questions in the same order throughout the country. The state of Massachusetts administers that same survey, same sets of questions every other year. In Scituate, thanks to Greg Ranieri and the Health and Wellness Department, we are able to do it every year. So it's nice, we can respond really quickly to things like vaping or things that we see with student mental health and things like that, and change our interventions at the school level. So it's really remarkable. And we have seen, since 2012, so 8 years of data, we've seen reductions across the board in alcohol use among high school students. It's been reduced by 30% since we've been coalitioning. Binge drinking, which is drinking more than 5 drinks in a row among youth, high school students in Scituate, has been reduced by 39% since we've started. Rates of regular marijuana use have also declined by 26%. We saw it go up a little bit last year, but overall, it's down 26% from when we started. And we're really proud of all that work. The only real risk behavior that's going up is vaping nicotine, and we have a really aggressive strategy this year. We'll be giving an update about that tomorrow at the Open Coalition meeting at the Scituate Town Library, which is kind of our kickoff for the school year, and everyone is welcome to that from 6:30 to 8. So lots of good stuff already there, but we're fighting a lot of policy, and I'm sure you're following the news, lots of bigger tides around that. So really wonderful things. We know if we can reduce these rates when kids are young and support families, if their kids get in trouble, we can reduce the need for recovery support services later. And that's really the public health approach that we take with all this. So it's awesome. Thanks for
Great.
mentioning that, Tony. Yeah,
That'd
leave
be
these.
good.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you for all the great work you guys do, and thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. Emery, thanks for your leadership.
Thank you, my friend.
Congratulations.
Okay, moving it along. We've got Fire Chief Murphy coming in with a donation.
Good evening.
Hi, Chief.
I received a donation for $1,000 from a John and Catherine Madia, M-A-D-I-A. They came in and saw my administrative assistant, Maureen, on July 30th, and evidently John had an accident, and he was very moved by the service he got. He stated that he'll never forget the kindness, professionalism, and efficiency of the firefighters who responded, and he feels that they saved his life. So he wanted to send a donation for $1,000 to the fire department, and I'm just here to request the board to allow me to accept that.
Did he lose any mobility?
I don't know. He was able to walk in, so that's a good sign. I didn't see him that day, Maureen did, but he did walk in, so that's a big positive.
Scary.
I know probably some of us on the board have experienced this as well, and we hear about it all the time, that your department does a great job with all these really emergency situations. I firsthand have had you guys respond to people in my family, so it doesn't surprise me at all. And I know you guys do a great job, and thank you for all your dedication to the town. Anyone else have?
No, I mean, I just want to say thank you to the Medias as well, and it's really nice that they're recognizing you and your department in this manner.
Yeah.
So it's very, very, very generous of them.
Yeah, it was.
It's nice.
Appreciative of it.
So can I have a motion to accept the donation?
Sure. Move that the Board of Selectmen accept a donation in the amount of $1,000 from Mr. and Mrs. John and Catherine Medea to the Scituate Fire Department in recognition of the excellent service provided by the Scituate Fire Department.
Second.
Second by Mr. Harris. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Bless you.
And John, I just want to give our condolences from the whole
Thank you
board to
very
you.
much. I appreciate you
We're
reaching
very
out.
sad to hear that. and, Our thoughts are with you.
Much
She's
appreciated.
quite a woman, I guess, huh? 12 kids?
12 kids in 13 years.
Amazing, amazing.
St. Margaret, we call it.
Yeah, seriously.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
We have an interview now for, is Sheila McCord here? Sheila, how are you? Come on up. If you can just give us 30 seconds while you're getting settled to read your resume.
Do you know how many positions we have open on that?
Great. So you're applying for the Recreation Commission.
Yes.
Tell us why you want to do that.
Well, I do work volunteer at social repair and recovery, so those were my people back there. I started with Anne Marie at Fax, and then she introduced me to John. And I just feel like I want to give a little more back to this town. I was born and raised here. My mom was born and raised here. It's an awesome town. Don't listen to Scituate Monthly. I see the correlation between social repair and Fax with the rec department. It's a great place for kids. I love that they're doing stuff, the programs they're putting up for the kids.
Don't. I won't need it.
And so I want to be part of it. I get along great with Maura Glancy. My kids have been in the programs. They worked for her. They were lifeguards. And I just see what they're doing, so I would like to help out, do what I can.
Great.
Excellent.
Have you been to any meetings?
No, but I did read all their minutes.
Yeah. All of them?
The last year.
It's a lot. 17 years.
They've done a lot.
Yes.
It is amazing what they've done. With that field, I just went over today again. They've lifted it up.
It's a very good committee. Any questions?
What might you see the next thing on the agenda now that the big field project
I
is?
know, it's, I guess the other fields they want, we just don't have enough fields, and I really do feel that that's a big thing in this town. Kids need somewhere to play, you know what I mean? That's important, and they're just being burnt out. So that I can see, that seems like where they want to go to right now, and keep the programs, add a little more, add more art, just get the kids, especially when they're older, that's where you lose them. When they have too much time on their hands, get stuff like that for them. That's where I really feel like, I knew I did that with my kids. I'm like, you were on the bus for a long time from BC High, but you're not in trouble. You know what I mean? So I didn't mind. So I want that. I'd like to help out with that if we could.
Okay, thank you.
That's going to be one of my questions, but I'll come up with another one, which, what programming do you think would be best to be added to help sort of link that concern that you just addressed with, your experience at South Shore Recovery?
Yeah.
It doesn't always have to be athletics, or is there any other type of
Right.
sort of activities that you see as a whole in our offering?
Yeah, well, I just, a little bit involved with like Boys and Girls Club. If you ever go there, like the programs that they have, their after-school programs, their mentoring programs, those are amazing. I don't know if that's something the rec department could get involved with. My son's actually applying for a job, and his job is going to be with kids that are failing. It's Boys and Girls Clubs there. So if a kid is failing in school, they're going with him, and he's working with those kids. He's helping them. I don't know if that's something they could do, but I just think that would be great, Just give the kids somewhere other than just hanging at home or hanging with their friends, because that's where bad choices are made.
Trouble happens. Agree.
Sean, any
Thank
questions?
you.
Oh, just thank you very much, Sheila, and I think you'd be a great asset. I know you've been from town the whole time. And most importantly, being a mom is probably, I think, would be a great asset. What you've just said, keeping the kids busy. They're not all sports. They're
No,
not,
no.
And like you just said, if someone starts to fall behind academically, then that could just get worse. But
Yeah,
no, thank you very much for stepping up.
okay.
Karen, anything?
All I can say is I've known Sheila a very long time, and when she stepped up with South Shore Repair Recovery, they're at least once, twice a week, doing volunteer work, and she'd be a great asset to rec.
Great. And clearly rec isn't just for kids, it's all programs.
Yes,
And I
yeah,
think,
yeah.
collaborating all that together, and Moore's done a great job with seniors and young kids, and like you said, it's not just sports, it's arts, it's cooking, it's whatever we can do. So it's another great program that we have here, so thank you for applying for it. And I don't know if we're going to vote tonight or not, but we may. And
Later on.
so you can watch on TV or
Stay all night.
To the question I just asked you, she's the only applicant, one opening?
So what are my chances?
I don't know.
if everyone.
Yeah, want to just do it now, and then she's...
This is going to be embarrassing.
Yeah, put your head down on your desk.
If the board wants to, we can vote now. So can I have a motion to appoint Sheila McCourt to the Recreation Commission?
Move
For
to
a term of, go ahead, you can read it correctly.
3 years. Yeah.
3 years
Yeah.
after,
Do you want me to do it?
yeah.
Move to appoint Sheila McCourt as a member of the Recreation Commission for a term of 3 years or until a successor is named. Completion of the Conflict of Interest Law online training program is completed within 30 days.
Second. Oh, sorry.
Second by Mr. Harris.
Fighting over you.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Change your mind.
Unanimous.
That was easy.
Thank you for applying. So you'll go talk to town clerk and get signed up and do all that sort of stuff.
Lorraine, I'll send everything.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, thank you.
We're going to skip this next item and go on to,
He's a little feisty today.
Pam.
Hi, Tony.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
So you've got some interfund borrowing to do.
So we do, yes. Nancy Holt, our town accountant finance director, has requested $110,000 to be borrowed for Article 3N that was authorized to borrow $200,000 from the April 2015 annual town meeting for Harbor River dredging. The project is scheduled to go in the fall. Will Branton, our sewer superintendent, that's also here tonight, has requested $93,000 for Article 3 EE, authorized to borrow a sum of $420,000, approved at the April 2017 annual town meeting for the copper limit reduction phase 2. The $93,000 will cover the cost of bidding, design, and permitting. He will be asking you to approve a contract tonight with tie and bond for this project, and that will cover bidding services, design, and permitting, and he will be back for more money to be borrowed on the project probably in February-ish.
So just a quick overview. These are short-term bonding that we're going to borrow from either free cash or stabilization fund until we actually go out and bond it. And
the
then
end
at some
of the
point, it'll be a
fiscal year.
long-term bonding
Yes.
after that. And the total is $203,000?
Yes.
Great.
203,000, yeah.
The combination.
And with the other one that we just borrowed, we also did another short-term borrowing earlier for the senior center. So we're up to $1,075,500 so far in interfund borrowing.
All against the stabilization?
Yes.
Any questions?
Can
So
I have one question, sorry. I know, I'm a little
Missed your
slow.
chance.
I know.
No, go ahead.
The balance that's on here for the remaining, the 3.4 million, is that all inclusive of the total million that collectively we're borrowing from stabilization, including what we did earlier on the senior?
That's correct.
Okay, that's what I just wanted to double check.
So on the two projects, is the dredging project only $200,000?
Top portion.
That's all? Okay.
200 plus for us, 200 plus from Marshfield, and the rest comes from the state.
So what was the total, is it 25%?
25, well, 50% match from the local community, so 25% from us and 25% from Marshfield.
Yeah, that seemed rather low. And then just the wastewater treatment plant is to get the copper out of the discharge. do we have any idea, is it $1 million about that we think the whole project is going to cost? Will? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're currently designing a septic receiving upgrade for the wastewater treatment plant. During our copper study, we identified the septic stream as one of the largest copper contribution waste flows in the treatment plant, and EPA's directed us to remove copper. We anticipate the project's total cost to be around $800,000, plus or minus 20%. And right now, we're just doing the design, engineering, permitting, and later in the season, we'll be going to bid and seeking the rest of the project funds.
Great. And this is not an optional project. The EPA has said, fix this. We've been talking about it for 5 years, maybe?
Correct. We do have one solution that has brought us into compliance, but we've had some minor issues, so this will take us further into compliance and allow us to maintain that very strict limit they set for us. It'll also have the added benefit of septic is a revenue stream for the wastewater plant, and this will improve the quality overall of the septic process. So there's a added benefit there.
Any questions? If none, I'll motion.
Move that the Board of Selectmen approve the interfund borrowing prepared by the treasurer collector in the amount of $203,000 for the purposes of the Harbor River dredging and copper limit reduction Phase 2.
Second.
Second by Mr. Harris. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
It is unanimous. Thank you guys for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is the annual town election to change the date.
It's a good idea.
Kathy, how are you?
Hi, good evening.
Hi, Kathy.
All right, so here we go again.
So town meeting falls on a holiday, and we got to change the date.
It does, according to bylaw, it's the sixth Saturday after the annual, which the annual town meeting is scheduled for April 13th. And the sixth Saturday puts it at May 23rd, which is Memorial Day weekend. We ran into this in 2015. And I asked that the change to May 30th would keep, even though there's a change to May 30th, the deadlines for nomination papers would stay as if the election was still going to be on the 23rd. In 2015, I got approval from the governor on April 17th.
Wow.
Yeah, so that was really late. So, and I think back then, we started this procedure, I think sometime in late October, but the state, I believe, goes on holiday from Thanksgiving for a while, so I figured I'd get the process going early if you're in agreement with that. I think we can basically all agree we don't want a town election on a holiday weekend. I know the candidates would prefer it to be moved out.
Sean, what do you think?
Gives them an extra week.
So you just want us to draft this letter to the governor asking?
Yes, I think I gave a template of another one from
So
the past.
is there,
Yep, there's a motion.
great.
Motion to change the date of the 2020 annual town election to Saturday, May 30th, 2020, upon approval of the governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Second.
Second by Ms. Conley. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous.
All right, great.
job.
Thank you.
That was
I also,
easy.
just so you know, I checked all the Jewish holidays. I've already booked the gym, so we're good to go.
Thanks for calling it out.
When would be the deadline for nomination papers?
It is April, I have it right here, hang on.
In case I have to write anyone in.
It is, I think it is April 3rd. It's a Friday.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, April 3rd by 5 PM in my office. And I'll have them ready sometime in early February, probably, okay? If anybody needs them, so. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Captain.
Calling me.
All right, moving right along, we have the Council on Aging, their bylaw changes that they brought before us at the last meeting. Linda Hayes.
Hi.
How are you? Janice, do you want to come up, or you?
Oh, she's,
Okay.
her other
What hat do you wear?
duties. Nope, just me.
Okay, so we went over this in detail. A lot of it was semantic kind of language stuff. There were a few issues that people had. Did anybody that had the issues read it and see that their changes were made?
Well, I did
Yes,
give you a list of the really minor changes that you had requested.
that were made. So that was on the back page.
Yep.
What I gave you electronically. But I guess the main things really, we changed the title on the title page, Policies and Procedures for the COA Board of Directors. So that was,
I thought it was,
and then, of course, I have it, Linda.
I can read through the last page. So
Yeah.
the revision suggested were to take out bylaws and put policy and procedures. Change establishing to fostering. The office, changing the address.
Yep.
Remove staff and board member names from the document.
Yeah, I took that out.
Membership, change the board to should, to is expected to have the majority of the council meetings. That's attendance of the meetings. Change that. We didn't change the time of the meeting.
We did, and in fact, we voted on the change in the time already. So as of October, we will meet at 6:30.
Oh, great.
It's not in the document. So, yeah,
your liaison appreciates that.
due to make, I know.
Right, and then just really the guidelines change and...
Yep,
Yeah.
just language after that.
So was there anything above and beyond these changes that anyone else saw?
No, the only thing that got missed, and this was just, this is on the headers, for each page, it still says bylaws. And that's just, because you gotta
Used to
go
know
and
about
change
that.
the header.
All right, I can do that.
No, everything else was in.
Nope, just thank you for asking, and
You are welcome.
Or-
And I think, I don't know if you have to vote on the general bylaws that will then have to be, well, are on the warrant at this point for the special town meeting. So it's,
right?
it's language change that corresponds to what we've done here,
To the by,
to the general bylaw.
They're adding associate members
oh,
to the
So it had to
general bylaw.
correspond in the general bylays
That'll be something we'll do when we go
We're
through
going to do the warrant, right?
right.
it. Yeah.
when you do the warrant. Okay,
Is there a placeholder for that?
there is.
Right.
Okay, so you
Fine.
don't need me for
Can I
that.
have a motion for the change or the acceptance of the policies and procedures?
I move to accept the suggested updates to the Town of Scituate General Bylaws, Sections 2510 for the Council on Aging, as well as the proposed updates and changes to the Council on Aging Rules and Regulations as of this date. Why does it say, oh, because it was before, September 17th.
17th.
This motion was to update
The guidelines.
the bylaws and their policies and procedures, so.
So we just want to do one.
If you want to do it all tonight, you can, there's no reason you can't.
Well, I think we should have the language.
Meeting, it's totally up to you.
Okay,
Why don't we just do the
okay.
policies and procedures? Does that make sense?
Okay. I move to accept the suggested updates to the Town of Scituate, or to the Council on Aging's policies and procedures as presented September 17, 2019.
Second?
Second by Ms. Conley. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Aye, it's unanimous.
All right.
Thank you.
Before you leave, I want to congratulate you on getting through the next step of
Oh, thank you, Tony.
getting the senior center up and going.
Yeah,
For those of you that don't know, some of us are at the meeting, the planning board passed the project to move forward with some conditions, and then I think it's going to go before ZBA for a little bit of stuff, but we're potentially, but we're one step closer, past 3-2 in favor of approving the project, so that's a thumbs
Allowed to
up.
move forward with the bids, and that's about a 6-week process from here.
Great.
So, yes, thank you,
job.
thank you.
Great.
And thanks to the planning board. And,
I don't think it has to go before ZBA.
oh, is
Does
that
not.
Vogel was already,
opined?
yes.
Oh, good. Great.
It's good.
All right, moving right ahead. We are going to talk about DBW. Kevin Cafferty is here. We've got a salt contract and another sewer plant contract.
Yep, two exciting contracts. We come in annually for the road salt. We went with we usually go with the state bid. And we've been working with Easton Salt for the past few years. One of the things that we've been fortunate enough to do is take the salt from a different zone, which is a little lower rate. And we've been going with
going with it, so far, it's pretty good. If you look in the back of the packet, it breaks into the different locations, 6A, B, C, and D.
Yeah, what zone are we?
So on the next page, there's a really cool map that's really hard to read.
Yeah, it has no zones on it.
And we fall into, I believe we are in 5A, which is 49.50.
Oh, good.
And we bump ourselves up to 6A, which is $1 cheaper, and we save $1 that way
Great.
for the salt. So we've been doing that the past few years, and it's worked out well. And Eastern Salt's moved a lot of this salt it's coming from Quincy now as opposed from East Boston, so it's a little better.
So is it more expensive or cheaper than last year?
Nancy's going to correct me, but I thought we were $45.85 last year.
I was going to say 48, 45.
Okay.
Well, one's higher and one's,
It's $48.45 this year. I
We're
think
approving
it's
48.
I think it went up.
I think it went up $1 or $2. But we've paid as high as $65 in the past, so it fluctuates.
that's a little bit of backwards logic, but we paid way more than that.
Well, it's how it comes in, what the supplies are. If there's a lot on the dock, you pay less. If
So just
there's
in
more.
terms of our budgeting, though, it should be,
It should
it's not
be,
going to have a huge impact on our budget.
it should be the same as it was last year. It shouldn't be, and it all depends on how much snow we get, how much we
And this
use.
is per ton, right?
Per ton,
Delivered?
delivered. Good price?
That seems pretty good to me.
$48 for a ton of salt?
I know, that's, you think that's high?
No,
I know, I think
You can
that's.
order a
cheap
ton
to
for your
me.
backyard.
Any questions?
I have one question. With the, I can't remember the fun name it was, but the truck that.
Magico,
Magico. Did
yep.
that reduce the amount of salt we needed?
We
Or-
believe it did, and
Yeah.
more importantly, it seemed, the guys were saying they thought it made our roads safer. It was quicker reacting. It causes the salt to react a lot quicker, which hopefully prevents accidents on the treatment of the salt. And we will be pre-treating again this year.
Okay, what's it called again? Magico?
Isn't it
Magico.
maple
Magic
or
water.
something? What is it? What's in it?
There's molasses.
Molasses, yeah.
There's calcium, there's a bunch of chemicals in it, and there's also there's a rust retarder in it mixed in also. There's a bunch of chemicals in it.
Cool. Hope we don't need any of it.
That'd be fine by us. We wouldn't have a problem with that. But it always never works that way.
Sean, any?
No, I'm quite familiar with this subject, but no, it's a good price, and we have to let them know 3 business days, something like that, or are we gonna fill it now?
We're gonna start filling the shed now. And usually what we try to do is if we take it in bulk quantity and say, hey, I want 1,800 tons, will you knock $1 off? We try to knock, beat them up another $1 or $2, whatever we can get out of them.
Good.
Anything else?
Well, just for the audience, this is another example of where we are using different ways to get things that are not just us going out and bidding for things, right?
Correct, so we're bidding on the statewide bid list.
Right.
In the last sheet on that paper shows it's what the state pays for all of the salts everywhere. So we're not going out on our own because we'd probably wind up with $70 a ton because Situate's further along than, say, Cohasset or one of the other towns. It
Yeah.
could be maybe 60.
I just keep liking to make the point that, we do try to be economical and use group procurement when we can, so.
Yeah, definitely, we always, and, the other thing is Nancy's good about it. We try to pay within 10 days, and we get another 3% off by
Discount, yeah.
a discount. I think it's 3 or 1% off if we pay quickly. And they're always in my office yelling at me to sign away on it and
Yeah.
make sure we're up to speed, so.
Thank you.
I have a motion?
Move that the Board of Selectmen award the contract to purchase road salt from Eastern Salt Company of Lowell, Mass. for $48.45 per ton.
Second by Mr. Harris. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it's unanimous. Great. Now, the next contract that we're going to discuss is what we already discussed, right? The copper project at the sewer treatment plant. This is actually giving out the contract to get it designed.
The engineering phase, design, permitting, and oversight and construction.
Great, we kind of just discussed it, but does anyone have any questions on this? And this $142,000 is part of that $800,000 total that you gave us, right?
Correct.
How long do you anticipate the design to take?
Should occur within the next 3 to 4 months. We anticipate going to bid for construction in the spring.
Is it adding a device, like a filtration system in, or is it?
Yep, it's a large piece of equipment. The equipment itself is probably somewhere between around $180,000 in value. This equipment screens and removes rags, debris, soaked materials from the waste stream, and then it's just the liquid going into the tanks. Yep.
Right, so is there like a concrete pad? Is it going to go in the building that we have now, or is it going to be a new?
It's going to go into a new building, which is why the project cost is so high. There might be a need to move one of our chemical pumps into this building to add our MetClear copper removal chemical. If we add it into a waste stream that's just liquid, it'll work substantially better. And we want to have a building that'll not only protect this new piece of septic equipment, but would also accommodate one of these copper chemical pumps if we need to move one over there.
Sounds like we should go for another tour.
Yeah.
Yep, and the idea too is in case we ever had expansion, you don't want to put it in the way, so that's part of the study, so that we don't interfere with anything in the future.
Great.
Good stuff.
Can I have a motion?
Move that the Board of Selectmen award the contract for the design, permitting, bid services, and construction oversight for a septic receiving upgrade at the wastewater treatment plant to Ty and Bond for $142,100.
Second.
Second by Mr. Harris. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it is unanimous. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you. Thank
We're
you.
not done yet.
Look, the party just keeps getting bigger.
Great. And can I just go off topic for 1 second? I know, Jim, what is the status of getting the construction for the gravity system out on Cedar Point? Are we proceeding with that?
Yep. So we're working on the RFP to get that going. And it's in our hands right now, and we're working on it.
Okay, obviously, we need to do that as quickly as possible.
We do need to do it as quick as possible. Our hope is, our big push for all departments is capital budgets due Thursday, so we're pushing to get everything finalized and get that out at the same time. So
we think within the next week or two?
We're hoping within the next week we get it out. They'll need a few weeks to review it, come up with some plans and get some prices, and, we'll go from there.
And well, thanks for that information last week.
You're welcome.
Great, so now the next topic is to discuss the DPW rates for 3 of our enterprise funds, water, sewer, and transfer station. Nancy Holt has given us a PowerPoint that we've all looked at, and we're going to discuss them, I think, one at a time. So starting with, hold on, what was first, transfer?
So as you get yourself caught up in your PowerPoint, the salt rate is the same as last year. It's a 1% discount if we pay within 10 days.
I was off.
Excellent.
I was off.
We like more.
We like
Bigger discounts are better.
Doesn't happen.
Great, so there's these 3 transfers, enterprise funds that we're going to talk about because there's the need to possibly raise rates in all of them. And Nancy's done some analysis of that, which I'll let you run through. We have looked at it, so you don't have to go word by word, but please don't skip any of the details.
Okay, just for the benefit of viewers at home, the 3 enterprise funds, the transfer station, the reason we are taking this review tonight is an increase in operational costs specifically related to hauling costs. The sewer enterprise fund, as we've spoken about at several meetings over the last year, has a structural deficit, meaning it doesn't bring in enough recurring revenue to cover its operating costs. It's been living for the last decade off one-time revenues, such as the prepayment of betterments from the Musquashkett Pond program project.
Sewer
Excuse me.
expansion.
Thank you. As well as now it's living off connection fees. So that is a significant issue that we should at least be aware of and try to address if that is how the board so chooses to do so. And then water, the driving force behind the rate increases for water has been investment into the infrastructure. It's all been debt service for that. Both water and sewer have a number of projects that are on their capital plan, which are still being vetted, as you heard from Will tonight. This particular presentation is just focusing on the known projects that we've talked about already and been approved, and looking at their impact on the current rate structure when it comes to the debt service. And then, as Kevin already mentioned, the capital projects for 21 to 25 is already ongoing, and those are all due back to me on Thursday. So anyone wants to bring me an extra set of tea for the weekend, because it's going to be a long one, feel free. So the transfer station enterprise, the issues we have in there is there's a decrease in revenue from recyclables, as has been discussed with the board repeatedly, unfortunately, and an increase in costs. And we called out some of the costs for you, just for those at home. Construction debris costs, that was a contract that was awarded in fiscal 19. It was $91 a ton, now it's $110 a ton. That's a 27% increase. That's our largest driver for hauling costs. CMAS went up 1.6%, the paper went up, plastic went up, electronics went up 15%. So these are all things that are recyclables, but we're paying to have removed. Now, we are paying to have them removed, but at a much lower rate than if they were in the household trash. So it still makes sense to recycle, but it's no longer that we're getting funds for these. Looking at the transfer station enterprise hauling costs in 2015, they were just about $451,000. In fiscal 2019, it was $767,000. So that's a dramatic increase in cost, and we did not have any major storms in fiscal 19. In fiscal 18 and probably fiscal 15, we had 2 major storms. So that's something that also needs to be considered when you look at the budget and look at the transfer station experience, is that major storms will bring in more debris, and it will follow a few months after the storm. So Storm Riley had cost an additional $42,000 to the transfer station, which was an emergency storm cost, which has been claimed with FEMA for a 75% reimbursement. FEMA did not like that claim, and we've yet to see if it'll make it all the way through CRC. They didn't like the claim for the additional water usage for the water lines that were taken out either, which is an $85,000 claim. But again, we put in our request and see what happens when those go all the way through that process. The fiscal 20... Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
So can you explain what the 767,000, like what's driving that spike? I mean, that's huge. It's like almost double.
It's a 70% increase.
Our contract with New England Recycling, which is our C&D contract, did go up in fiscal 19 from $91 a ton to $110 a ton. That's one of the drivers. Sean, do you want to speak to any of the other?
What about the big jump from 15 to 16? So it went up 42, was 15 just an anomaly?
15 could have been an anomaly. That was when the last C&D contract went into place. It was their 3-year contracts. So we were at $91. I can go back and see what the C&D...
We had C&D down to like $71 at one point. We renegotiated with them and got it way down.
Well, there were more players. Weren't we going to Bourne?
There were a lot more players. We were threatening to go to Bourne and go to different places, and at the time, we had Lopes come in, and they came in with a ballpark price, I think, like $69 or $71. It was a much lower rate for the C&D, and it's gone up since. There aren't as many players in it.
I think we had difficulty getting bidders, as I recall, from the last go-around.
For the board's knowledge, there are very limited places where you can take this construction demolition. And some of our material that and all the towns are in the same situation. The towns that have these take it or leave it's the 3-legged chairs end up in the C&D, and the toys and plastic and all that stuff. So it's what they call hard to handle materials. Ends up, and there are very few transfer stations, ends up on a rail car and goes to these large landfills out in Ohio. So to Nancy's point, there are just fewer and fewer of these places. So there you have it.
Is that a business we have to be in?
We have to. You cannot take this material down to CMAS.
So should we not take C&D?
We make money on C&D.
We make money on C&D. We have, our rates significantly higher. We have people go over the scale, and it was a funding source. It was funding a lot of, he was generating a lot of revenue.
At one time, because I had heard it out on the street, I don't go into the transfer station in Scituate, so I don't really know, but I had heard on the street, we finally went up on the rates to go over the scale. And, it was sticker shock for a lot of the contractors, but I think they were able to make adjustments and charge the end users more, so there you have it to better balance it.
We make $90 a ton. So that offsets some of the other costs that we incur. For fiscal '20 so far, we've expended 23% of the budget, and we're 2 months in. So, and that's because the budget isn't appropriate for the level of spending that we're seeing incurred for hauling costs.
So that will annualize to?
To approximately $800,000. So that's what's before you tonight is realistically based on the costs we're seeing. Our fiscal 2020 budget for hauling costs should be approximately $800,000, which is $114,000 more than what it's set at. And we discussed this when we were doing the budget, that it was going to have to be adjusted. We didn't realize it would have to be adjusted quite so much until we got the final numbers for fiscal 19. The original 2020 departmental request was $775, and as we just said, the fiscal 19 actual was $767, so that's too close of a margin. As we already touched on what the July and August numbers were. Our revenue sources for transfer station enterprises are limited. There's trash bags, stickers, and bulky waste fees. So we did provide to you a comparison of local towns, what the different rates are for stickers, trash bags, if there's a trash fee in place. So there's one local town that has a trash fee that they assess to people. The 2 towns that are in red have curbside, and also some of the common recyclables or bulky waste that gets brought in, like mattresses, white goods, CRTs. And as you can see, the adjustment that the board made in fiscal 19 brought some of these up to level where the surrounding community. So there's not really a lot of options for increasing those rates. If you increase the mattress rate, you're more likely going to see mattresses discarded in a poorer way than they are if they can bring them to the transfer station. So things that we're focused on are the stickers and also the C&D rate. If you just look at the C&D column, currently we're at $200. That's the same as $200 per ton. That's the same as Duxbury. It's the same. The next highest is Kingston at $240, and then Cohasset's at $400. Hingham's at $120, and Marshfield's at $150. Hingham, Kingston, and Norwell do not accept commercial C&D. So even though they have even though Hingham has a much lower rate than us, you can't take an out-of-town C&D to them or commercial C&D to them. So those people are probably coming to us. So our direct competition is Marshfield, because if you could choose us for $200 or Cohasset for $400, we know where it's coming. So revenue options to raise $114,000 are stickers, every $5 increase in the sticker price, and we're just looking at the $80 residential sticker, not at the senior sticker or additional stickers, is approximately $20,000 in revenue, because it's approximately 4,000 stickers sold. In C&D, every penny on the pound, which is $20 on the ton, is $60,000, and I'm not going to say I had to look up and remind myself there's 2,000 pounds in a ton. I thought it was, but I just had to check, just in case.
Ton, not a gross ton.
Oh, don't even start with that. I'm lucky I took Comet and I knew the dry measure and wet measure were different. So every change on that penny on the pound brings $60,000 based on the current number of tons that we're seeing, which is about 3,000. So you have a couple options. If you decide to change the rate to generate revenue for the $114,000 within the rates, rather than trying to use retained earnings to fill that gap, you're looking at put the burden on the resident, the sticker users. That would be an increase of the sticker price from $80,000 to $110,000, which would bring in a revenue stream of $120,000. If you put the burden just on the construction debris users, that would be a 2-cent increase per pound, which would bring our rate to $240 a ton, which would bring it even with Kingston, providing also $120,000. And as we said, our only competition in the area is Marshfield, so people could either choose to go to Marshfield and save the $90 a ton, or they could come here. If they go to Marshfield, we lose that revenue, but we also don't incur the cost for getting rid of that additional C&D.
Wait, so, go ahead.
Your other competition is Braintree, and I don't know what that is a ton to go over that scale. It's privately owned. But just keep that in mind, because I have heard of roofing contractors that, not necessarily taking it from out of town, but they're, let's just say it is in town, and quick trip to Braintree sometimes.
Yeah, and
could
we're
be
making,
worth it.
it's
And I don't know.
cash where it's $90 a ton that we've been making on C&D. It's significant.
Yeah. Can I ask one question?
Yeah.
We get a small amount from the metal containers, don't we? Is that in here anywhere? And who has that contract now? Is it Spiegel? Or
It's
is it-
Spiegel, and it's not a huge amount for what we get out of the metal, I don't believe. I can look it up though and find out what it is.
Shall I have it?
What that was?
And what did we take out?
15,000 last year. We took in.
Okay, $15,000. How many tons? Or does
260, 263. Just so.
Do we have any data that shows, and we're assuming that's the same amount of debris is brought in, that's level if we increase the price? I mean, it's the same, your analysis is on the same quantity. Do we, to Sean's point, is there any data, and when we raced in the past, have we lost people coming in? Have they gone elsewhere? I don't know how we...
Yeah.
The last increase was in fiscal 19. I don't know when the prior increase on C&D was before that.
Last March.
Yeah, but that was the last one.
That one.
And we still finished the year with $25,000 more in revenue in C&D than we did the prior year.
Okay.
So, to your point, if we were to permanently go up, I don't know how much we would drive away from the data we have so far, because we only have 6 months to go by.
And that's on the C&D side, so if we raise the rate of the bags.
Right.
We're not recommending you raise the rate of the bags, because we're even with everybody else on bags.
Okay, all right.
I think it would just discourage people from using them, and you would see more public dumping.
Well, they'd use private haulers, your numbers would be down, your numbers, residents. Then stickers as well.
Bags are not a big driver, revenue-wise.
Okay.
Like, if you increase it $1, I just don't think you're going to see it. So we have the option of splitting the burden between stickers and C&D users, which would be $15 increase in the sticker price from $80 to $95, producing $60,000, and then a penny increase on the construction debris that would bring it to $220 a ton, which would provide $60, and that again gets you to $120. So it's like a giant math problem. And then if you wanted to do something and change the rates and leave them for a while, to provide sufficient funding to help rebuild the retained earnings, and then have some funding for capital projects. So the debt in the transfer station enterprises retires this year. It is then a debt-free enterprise fund. So if you want to go forward with the items that are on their 5-year plan currently, the one that is going to be updated, there's about $480,000 worth of capital projects, including a couple of pieces of larger equipment. So that's something just to consider. Do you want it to remain debt-free, or do you want to consider financing for some of those?
How much retained earnings do we have?
I don't have certified retained earnings at this time. They're with the Department of Revenue. I'm expecting them to come in shortly.
About?
Estimated?
Give me a second to find it, and I have my estimates somewhere.
Question while she's looking? Oh.
Go ahead.
So just for point of clarification on this, in my opinion, I think since the largest increase is because of the C&D, that I'm more inclined to, shift any increases that way. But I want to understand your chart. You have, the per pound and per ton price. Is that in addition to the $200 on top? Like, is there a permit that they pay first and then we charge them? So what is that up top? Is that just like an average? Where it says C&D? Yeah, solid waste.
That's the per ton, I'm sorry.
That's the addition. You'd have to add, we'd be 240 or 260.
And they don't need a sticker, right? They
No,
just
that's
come
the
in.
current per
No,
ton.
they get a sticker. We require
buy a
everybody to
sticker.
get a sticker, so
Oh, okay, so
the
it's
sticker
adding,
list
so we're bringing
is
to
on that
sticker.
also.
Thank you. I was trying to figure that out.
And I'm sorry, it was poorly labeled. I just assumed everyone knows C&D was C&D per ton.
You've been hanging around with us.
That
too long.
helps,
Yeah,
thank
it
you. So just know what that increase is. Okay, so we're paying
Tony, to your
$200.
question, my estimate for transfer station retained earnings is $396,000 to be
What's the debt expense that's going to fall off?
$16,500.
16,000?
500.
That's it?
Yeah, we, in one of the refundings of the bonds that we did in the last 2 years, we actually appropriated money at special town meeting to pay off some of the transfer station debt. That was, remember we were doing $100,000 from the general fund to offset it? We stopped that and paid off that debt when we did a refunding. So this is the last piece of transfer station debt that retires this year.
So in this budget, there's
16,500.
16,000.
Yeah, of debt service. Sorry, I wish I could say it was like the golf course and it was like $300,000 pickup, but it's at least a pickup.
Yeah, so we use the retained earnings in that fund to buy equipment.
Yes, you would use them for equipment and other improvements to the site. The board could choose to take no action and to address the budget by using retained earnings to fill that gap, but you're going to have the same problem next year.
Yeah,
So we would
just
advise
be-
against that, but
Right.
it's at the board's discretion.
So the problem is, if you raise C and D, your expense will go down, but your revenue will go down twice as much, potentially, if you made twice the money on it.
It may be a discussion we're revisiting in the following year, saying, you know what, we need to take our C and D price down because it's not benefiting us by doing so. We're losing too much revenue. But where we'd go from $90 a ton to $130 a ton in revenue. So there's an additional $40 a ton in delta there. We're still paying New England Recycling $110 instead of getting $90 in additional revenue because we're charging $200. We'd be charging either $240 or $220.
Yeah, but you need that money to make up the deficit. That's
True,
not-
but I'm just saying that
So if you
we'd have to lose more.
If you lose anything, then if you lose 10% of it, your expense is going to go down 10, and your revenue's going to go down 20, and you're in a deeper hole.
Sean, from your point of view, would people be more likely to travel out of town, or is it just too much of a?
I don't know what Braintree's charging, so that's the first question that I would have.
I just hear a lot of people talk about the convenience of here.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Whether it's Marshfield or Norwell or Cohasset. I have a certain idea of the Braintree's right there.
That's
the
it.
future, yeah.
So I think, the solution isn't just raising costs, raising the price. It's got to be multi-pronged, and we've got to come up with other ways to make revenue in that facility, because none of the solutions are good. Especially raising C and D could have a huge negative impact on it. It could be the exact worst thing to do. If all of a sudden half the people go to Braintree, now we're in a bigger hole. Raising the price of the stickers, we can do that, but then, like Maura pointed out, we're penalizing everybody for the C and D component of increase. So somehow we've got to look at this and find out ways to save costs, generate revenue from some other stream, and increase prices nominally. And all I see here is increased prices.
Well, you can stop taking C and D. You can stop taking commercial C and D.
That hurts us too, right? Because
It does.
That was going to be my question.
You have limited options in transfer station. I mean, what else can you do up there for revenue-generating items?
That's what I'm asking the people that run the transfer station to come up with ideas and other ways to kind of, we've done in the past where we get money from recycling. I know that's kind of dried up, but somehow we've got to think of other ways. Otherwise, it's just going to, every year.
We do run pretty lean up there manpower-wise, and, even the equipment now, I know it was replaced, the loader is 10 years old, but it has, what does it have for hours? Over 12,000 hours, 15,000 hours. It's reaching the end of its useful life, and the backhoe's worse, so.
Right, and that's going to only add to it because we don't even have a capital, we don't have a capital.
They've been on the capital for the past 5 years, for the past couple years.
I'm saying we can borrow it and spread it
Yeah.
over 30 years, but we're not gaining anything because there's only $16,000 of debt
Right.
in the budget right
And we were playing with ideas, we were talking about maybe leasing equipment, but we figured out the cost if we leased it. If you lease it for 3 years and calculate the lease costs, it comes out to almost what we'd be paying for the equipment and the amount of damage that gets done up there. Because they go out and they fight snow and they do everything else, so the equipment does take a beating. We also use it for storm cleanup too. So, it's
Yeah, I mean,
it's
you
a
have to,
combination.
you have to add to the capital. It's,
Yeah.
it's a business.
Yeah.
And we're paying for recycling now.
As opposed, we used to generate funds.
Right.
Make money, and I have looked into other options. There are some cheaper tonnages, but they don't provide pickup or delivery.
For what type of material, Sean?
Cardboard,
Okay.
paper, those type of stuff. Right now, we're given the cans, the compactor cans. There's no charge for those.
Right.
So the vendor supplies us with the containers, picks them up, and delivers them. We did purchase a roll-off last year, which would allow us to do that. And now you go back to staffing. Now, I can't run with 3 guys, so what does that 4th guy do? Because there is somebody in Mansfield with a lower rate, but you gotta get it to. We're doing that with the glass. We're hauling that ourselves to save.
So it takes a guy off the highway department who should be patching roads or doing whatever, and he's hauling glass down to Freetown.
Well, it's probably going to bring into discussion whether we should be looking at a pickup option as opposed to a transfer station.
Yeah, I would say, do we want to be in this business at all? It's a hard question. When was the last time we studied that? I know at some point a few years ago, there was some talk of an analysis of, curbside. It's a tough business to be in now.
That's very expensive. Curbside is
Yeah.
very expensive.
I think if you look at Marshfield's rate, which has curbside, they just talked about raising their rates to $340. When I worked there, it was $365.
Is that what the trash fee is?
Yeah,
The
trash
fee
fee.
per
It's
household
on the water
for
and sewer
curbside
bill.
pickup?
There's a trash
my question.
Then
fee as
they
well.
also, Marshfield's unique, they have a transfer facility where the residents can go.
They still have to pay the trash fee.
Okay.
Had that argument with lots of people.
All the
Yeah.
details, but right now, it's not working out so well.
Well, there's a strike there right now.
That's right.
And that's another, another aspect.
Right.
And the phone calls we get when we have to close a transfer station are,
We've heard. Shauna, is it accurate to say that C&D will slow down quite a bit over the winter?
Typically, yeah. You see the spike in the spring, I think it's either the cleanup or the remodeling.
Yeah.
The
Well,
decks, the roofs.
Exactly.
I'm wondering if, if we choose to go the way of increasing the C&D rates, there's time for people to get accustomed to the higher rate instead of just, you wouldn't want to do it right when they start their busy season. And that compared to those around, I mean, that's why I asked the question about do we see the fall off, depending on, it's still a way to get to Braintree and there's traffic, so.
That's right.
If we're not that much further, I would imagine there'd be a dip, but I think that this would be an advantageous time to introduce a rate increase if it weren't, didn't put us way out of the ballpark.
I don't think you have a choice of not, because you
Right.
can't double the price of the bags.
No, and I personally think that,
I mean, the sticker.
relying on retained earnings over time is not a good practice, I would think.
But it could be a stopgap for a year to figure out,
It's been a stopgap for how many years?
well, otherwise, the solution is every couple of years, just raising the rates until we think out of the box and get creative and try and find out other ways to do stuff at that facility. And I don't know exactly what the answer is, but we're going to see this in the next 2 enterprise funds too. It's just raise the rates, raise the rates, raise the rates. And there's got to be something that goes along with that.
So what is the C&D sticker rate?
There was no
it's
sticker
the
for C&D.
same sticker, so if you
I
had,
heard, so it's the same sticker as for a resident?
we used to, at one point, we had contractor stickers a while back, and it was the same price as the
Could we
resident
raise
sticker.
rates on those stickers?
It was,
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
That might be a little hard to do, Karen, because Kevin might come in with his household trash today. He has a pickup truck.
Yeah.
And then next week, he's doing a project at his house with doors and windows. So, and I think there's a lot of that, guys with pickups.
There are.
They might come in
Okay.
with C&D, and they might come in with both. They'll take the MS and throw that where that goes, and then go around the scale, and then go dump their construction demolition material. So,
But is the majority of the C&D from contractors, not
Contractors and some residents, it's
I
handy
mean,
to get
some
rid of
residents
stuff,
do, but
yeah.
I mean, would you say that the majority of it is from people that do it for a living? And maybe Karen's idea,
Yeah, we have a lot of roofers that come in, and take care of stuff, or guys that are doing demolition. We get calls from contractors that are renovating houses and asking if they can buy a sticker so they can use the C&D because it's closer and easier, but, as Sean said, there's a lot of guys out there that are doing side projects and everything else that are working in Scituate and come in with their pickup truck.
do we let non-residents buy a sticker?
For getting rid of C&D, yeah, we'd let somebody buy a sticker for that.
For just the $75?
$75, yeah. 9 times out of 10, they're working for somebody in town, and we let them, if they're bringing C&D and we're making $90 a ton, yeah, we want to bring it in.
Is this something you need to decide tonight? I'd like to meet with you and Sean, if the board's okay with it. And, I see, I'm very familiar with some of these other towns you have listed. I do a lot of work for them, so I see that side of it. I don't see what it costs. I don't see what their fees are and all that stuff. If I could work with Sean.
We don't have to vote anyone.
Just this particular one, and if I could spend some time with you and see what we can come up with. I had some other thoughts, questions. I know how a lot of these other towns operate, and it's very much the same. I've experienced with a lot of them.
Through the South Shore Recycling Coalition, we do meet with the other towns, we meet monthly, and we tour the other facilities also, and, Situate's transfer station is probably one of the best on the South Shore compared to some of the others. I mean,
You've been to Hingham's?
I have, but I don't know.
Why, what does Hingham do differently?
It's a lot different. Just a lot bigger staff. I don't know how they do it.
They do their own baling, they do a ton of stuff. I was thinking more Duxbury and stuff like that. We're better than them.
Well, no, if I could, and put our heads together, this is kind of interesting, and see what we come up with. Maybe, it's gonna be difficult. The big thing that's driving this thing is the recyclables are just selling this. Where you had a little bit of revenue, you don't have anything now, and you're lucky to get rid of it. Really. I mean, places are closing up.
Service.
You see it on
Pay for
TV.
service.
That's right.
Huge places with just stuff they can't get rid of.
Hingham will try and bail their own stuff and wait till the prices get better and then sell it
Yeah.
and do a lot of different things like that. But they have, they've got the land, they've got the balers, they've got more people.
We sell ours to Hingham.
They don't take other people's. They're limited.
They don't take other people's C&D or anything to that effect, so you just keep it all in.
But I don't know what it costs to go in there. I go in there and I've worked for Hingham, so I just don't know what the other end is, so that's what I'm kind of.
You get weighed.
Yeah. Excuse me?
You have to go in and get weighed. You have to go up to the DPW office, have them inspect the load, and then you get weighed. Then you go and you, to the actual facility where there is a scale, I'm sure.
Right,
We have a
that's
scale
what
too.
I'm familiar with,
Yeah,
right.
and it's the same for residents. I've spent many a happy day on the scale.
Right.
At the transfer station, okay? Just qualify that. And it's $15 no matter if you bring one thing or if you bring, unless your tonnage goes higher than that.
And they're
So
all
it's a
doing it
minimum
themselves.
15?
There aren't any, other than Marshfield is privatized, to a point. Again, that's a public-private, they have
Well, they have
staff down
huge
there.
commercial tax base, too.
Right. Yeah, so it's maybe
Yeah.
not fair to compare to Marshfield or Hingham. Enterprise funds, they look at me because I've talked to them at the other towns, and they're like, what's that? It's not-
And to your point, I couldn't find the rates for James G. Grant, that Braintree transfer facility. They don't put them online. You have to contact them. So we can contact them in the meantime and find out what their rates are.
I have their phone numbers, I can contact them. Covanta? Yes. Yep. So if we could just look at that.
Yeah, and again, I'd love to see the deficit's 114, we're cutting $22,000 out of the budget. We're gonna try and make some revenue on this stream, and we need to raise rates as a component of a plan, not just the answer. And to Karen's point, if we've got to save $114,000 this year and there's no C&D coming in, it's less C&D coming in, then we're not going to save the money
Right.
by raising the rates.
It's a valid point, but you may have to make a rate adjustment and see the impact, and then roll it back if it doesn't do what you want it to do, if that's one of the options that comes forward.
Well, we're going to have to, otherwise you're going to have to raise the stickers by $35.
And if we just gave them a little bit of notice, I think that's what I heard last time, is I think we went up quite quick. We went up quite a bit, and so some of those people that might be doing jobs, it just eats into their profit that much more.
Or they just
If they're
charge
doing
their
it.
customer more.
Well, that's right, so to have doors and windows and roof replace, it's gonna cost us a little more.
To give them time to incorporate it into their quotes if
Exactly.
they know it's coming down the pike.
Right.
So how much time is Friday?
No, if we decided tonight to increase the C&D rate, you know, it would have to go into effect maybe in
January 1st?
or something,
Right.
a couple of months, something like that. I'm just throwing it out there. just
Can we
think
adjust it during the year? Yeah. So if we see something strange happening that we don't, isn't to our benefit, that we could go back and,
But to Karen's point, the C&D does slow down quite a bit in the winter.
But we can compare it historically. Unfortunately, I do have historic records on our C&D because of the whole FEMA claim. I have it back a few years by month. Saddened to say.
And we track it and submit it to the DEP by month also, so we have really good records of what goes in and what goes out.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to look at it, I think that's fine, but I think if we, whatever we decide, we could just pick November 1st or something, give everyone a chance to know and hit it when it's softening, so you can start doing this, you know, the comparison. I don't think it's going to go off so much on the rails, but you know better about this stuff.
Yeah, we'll see.
So the $60,000 of savings with $20 per ton is annualized?
Yes, that's based on 3,000 tons.
Based on 3,000 tons. That's
Say
all-
that again?
So a $20 increase on the per tonnage times 3,000 tons, which is our average tonnage, would be a $60,000 increase. Yeah.
So we've already lost, if follow Sean's suggestion, half the year.
Right, but you're going to pick up in the spring and you're losing part of the year that's going to be quiet, depending on when you go into effect. So you've lost the summer, don't necessarily lose the entire winter. But yes, you're only going to get part of it.
So, interesting. All right, well, I would suggest that we postpone this till the next meeting.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
If people can think about it. If you guys can think about it and see if there's any other ways to find any.
Kevin, I can meet with you.
Yes, that'd be
So,
good.
This week might be a little tough, but next week for sure. Monday, I'll come in.
Okay, so the next one up for discussion is the sewer enterprise. Again, we talked about the driving rate increase for this one is the structural deficit from utilization of one-time revenues to fund operating costs. The recurring revenues are not sufficient to support the operations of the sewer plant currently. And I provided a slide in your presentation that shows that the sewer enterprise has used retained earnings to balance its budget for the past 10 years. So this is a practice that we eliminated in most of our operational budgets, but it is still in place in sewer. It doesn't mean that you can't do it, it's just not a recommended best practice to use one-time revenues, because eventually the one-time revenues run out. Right now, the fiscal '20 budget is insufficient to meet expected costs for electricity, chemicals, and repair and maintenance based on fiscal '19 actual. Again, this is one that we spoke about during the budget cycle, that we didn't have sufficient revenues in our projections to actually do this. And for fiscal '20, sewer enterprise was the only enterprise fund budget that was voted with retained earnings being used to even get it to the level it's currently at, which was $253,001. Every 1% rate increase is equivalent to about $14,774. The slide that's in there, the rate modification discussion, rates not supporting the operational budget, it's the same slide from the October 2016 sewer rate discussion. So this has been before the board before. I know I called in one of my discussions before you that it should be a 10% increase over 5 years. I think Ty and Bond came up with 15% over 4 years. Last year, we did 5% on the rate, and we did $3,000 on the connection fee, $2,000 on the connection fee. So right now, the expected cost for electricity, chemicals, and repair and maintenance require an additional $82,000 if they were to realize the fiscal '19 actual expense. Other than repair and maintenance, I don't see any savings that you would have in electricity or chemicals. The flows are not diminishing, so we still have to incur those costs for chemicals, including the copper chemicals. And electricity, there is no reduction in the use of electricity or the rates currently. So repair and maintenance would be the only place where you, of those three, where you could make a reduction, and that would mean deferring maintenance. So that's something to consider. The identified expected debt service increases that are not being recommended to be included in a rate discussion this time is $226,000 for the rehabilitation of the belt filter press and sludge facility, which is an approved project. There are debt retirements that could fund that particular debt as it moves forward. The $2.3 million Cedar Point inflow and infiltration reduction, as you started this conversation with, looking to know when that's going to be redesigned. That whole project needs to be redesigned, so that's not going to come forward for the construction part in the immediate future, but it will be something that will need to be reflected into the rates. And then the $920,000 for the copper reduction measures, as Will was outlining in his projects. He has enough to get started, and then a little bit more in short-term financing, but the actual full project doesn't need to be financed within the rates at this time. And again, it may be able to be accommodated through retirements, depending on when it comes on to the debt schedule.
Can I interrupt and ask a question? On the Cedar Point, you said that that's not in the debt schedule, but the funding for Cedar Point,
it's an approved capital project, but we've only borrowed $188,000 so far, which was for the original design and engineering.
Okay, so that was the 2.5 that was always in the enterprise fund. Okay, thank you.
On the fiscal year, on your chart here, you say we used $253,000 last year.
No, we used it for this fiscal 20.
Right, and there's fiscal 20, that says 18, right?
Yeah.
That was the retained earnings that were certified July 1st of 2018, which we used at the April 2019 meeting for the fiscal 20 budget.
So I can understand. The 253
so
that we put in under the number 7118
was part of the retained earnings from last year that we appropriated during the fiscal year.
I don't care where
Okay.
But that was, we needed $253,000 to balance a budget for fiscal year 18.
No, we needed $253,000 to balance the budget for fiscal 20, and it didn't fully balance it. It just got us so we could get going till a special town meeting. So, look at it this year. You just asked me today.
2018.
Okay,
just wait a minute. Just stay with me for a sec. So you asked me when we started this conversation about retained earnings, or close to the beginning of this conversation. So July 1st, 2019, we'll get our retained earnings as of that date. It's what our retained earnings are from our operations in 19. We'll use them in 20. We may use them for the budget for 21. This is the same case here. These were last year's retained earnings certified as of July 1st, 2018. We used them during fiscal 19, which began in July of 18, and we also appropriated some of them for the fiscal 20 budget. So it's the start of the beginning of the fiscal year when it's certified.
I don't understand.
It travels, it can go through 3 fiscal years.
Right, so listen, my question is, how much money did you need in fiscal year 18 to balance the budget? I don't care what retained earnings they came from.
$687,000. Go back 2.
So why is that under 16?
It's under the date it was the retained earnings that were used. So it was the 7/1/16 retained earnings, which was the amount that was certified for use in fiscal 17. So for the annual town meeting that year, which would have been the fiscal 18 budget, you used 351. At a special, you used an additional 335. So that's why the 7/1/2019 column is in red, because we don't have certified retained earnings at this time.
But you think we're going to need another 82 in addition to the 253?
I believe we're going to need $82,000 either from revenue that is being raised through a rate increase, or you could use your retained earnings to plug that hole again. But you're going, and I believe Will support me on this, you're going to need to adjust the fiscal 20 budget, or you're not going to have sufficient funds.
The question is, the 253 for 2020 budget, which you already put in at the annual town meeting, you think you need $82,000 more to balance that budget?
Correct.
Which is a heck of a lot less than the $700,000 in 15 and the $600,000 in 16.
But keep in mind, in some of those years, we were putting in large amounts of capital at special town meetings, not capital, large amounts of capital, I mean funding for repair and maintenance to the sewer plant because of deferred maintenance. If you recall, at those specials, we were putting in $200,000-$300,000 at a time to deal with AT4, to deal with missing pumps, a whole bunch of serious issues that were discovered at the plant that were maintenance issues, and I shouldn't say discovered, that came to the forefront and had to be dealt with.
But they were also not operating expenses, they were,
A lot of them were covered through repair and maintenance funds.
right, but it wasn't in the budget. If it was, if
No, they didn't.
if there was a $200,000 expense that we didn't expect, it wasn't in the budget line.
We didn't increase the budget by a similar amount, no.
Right, so it washes.
So
So what do you expect the retained earnings to be estimated?
right now, my estimate for sewer is $1,069,000, and that's because we brought in just over $900,000 in connection fees last year because of 50 Country Way. So that's a one-time revenue. We're not going to see 50 Country Way again. We'll see Toll Brothers. That's going to bring $1.26 million, but the question is, what do you want to do with that $1.26 million? Do you want to help it to use those funds for running the operational budget for the next few years, or do you want to use that for capital investment?
Well, we're doing capital investment and have been doing capital investment for the last 10 years, just through a different method. You're proposing that we change the philosophy of running this, where we take the betterments that people pay and put that towards capital and make this thing run sufficiently on its own.
The betterment should be paying the debt service. They no longer do so. We ran out of prepaid betterments. Those have gone down by 50% 3 years running. They were at 800, then they went to 600, then they went to 400, now I think they're down to 200. So when we get to the end of that amortization schedule for those projects, those betterment revenues were supposed to be 20-year betterments to cover that debt service all the way across. It's not going to happen that way. All those funds have been used. You just have debt service that you're going to have to continue to support. That's the problem of one-time revenues. So you've created a structural deficit. You just have to be mindful that you've created it, you're going to have to continue to fund it until you run out of one-time revenues. So when you no longer have any major projects that are bringing in connection fees, the delta of what you've built up in that one-time revenue gap is going to be significant. Right now, we're talking about a 22.7% gap between what you need for recurring revenues and what you have for recurring revenues. Now, to Tony's point, what can you cut in that expense budget? Repair and maintenance would be one of the things, equipment parts would be one of the things, have a little less aggressive program for those things. That's someplace you can cut. Your fixed costs with chemicals and electricity, you're not going to be able to cut. Same thing with debt service. Chemicals will be positively impacted when that I&I project in Cedar Point comes online. That will help the chemical costs go down because there'll be less effluent to treat. But until you get there, you're still going to have that cost.
Also important to note, the wastewater treatment plant is at 99.2% of its capacity, and currently planned and already approved projects put us up to 104% of our capacity. So we anticipate connection fees ramping down substantially.
So just so I understand the math, when you do a project and you figure out the betterments, did I understand you to say that the betterment fees paid over time don't correlate to the debt service period of time?
They should be offsetting the debt service over the same period of time. You probably won't get a one-to-one correlation because it depends on the rate that the debt is issued at. You are collecting usually 5% on your betterments. That's the statutory rate unless town meeting approves a different rate when they authorize them. But if people will prepay their betterments, when the house is sold, you don't want somebody else's betterment, you want it paid, so you have it nice, clear.
Oh, right, okay.
It's that revenue, if you're not setting it aside. Now, to Scituate's defense, there was no method to set it aside previous to this. You could not put money in your retained earnings and set it aside for future betterments. The Department of Revenue wouldn't allow you to do it. They've only changed their policy on that in the last few years. Situate set up a sewer enterprise capital stabilization fund and did pull some money into that, and we've used that for some of our capital projects. We used it at the last annual town meeting for one of the projects, and that's a discussion the board has to have, maybe separate from rates, maybe as part of rates, what it wants to do with these connection fees. because it's one-time revenue. If you use them that year, they're gone. If you want to use them only for capital, if you want to use 50% for capital, 50% to support the operating budget, whatever that formula is going to be, we should come to some agreement, put it into place, and start moving with it. As to Will's point, they will drop off until we free up more capacity.
Right.
And the betterments have definitely dropped off. We've seen that happen. To the point of the increase in betterment costs, last year we took in 3 $16,000 betterments of that $900,000. All the rest of it was at the $14,000 rate because they were grandfathered projects. So even though we increased the connection fees, both in sewer and water, we have a significant number of grandfathered projects that are at the lower connection fees. Toll Brothers is one of them. For both enterprise funds, you have Lawson Green on your docket for later on. And that's another one that would be a bigger project. Country Way is another one. So just things to be mindful of, with 10,000 other things to be mindful of that are on your plate. So the two things that we brought forward for you to think about was a massive rate increase, which would be 22.7%, which would generate the difference of what we need to get to be fully functioning under recurring revenues. Or option two, which is something the board partially did 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, which was the base rate of the sewer enterprise fund provided free usage. It used to provide 12,500 cubic feet of usage in the base rate. The board cut that by 50% 3 years ago to 6,250 cubic feet. We're one of the few communities that I found that actually has free usage within their base rate. Most of the others start at zero usage, and you just pay. If you were to eliminate that 6,250 cubic feet or 625 cubic feet, that would also get you what you need, and bring up so that the recurring revenues would be set to match the current level that we expect to need, and then you would have to make a decision as to what you want to do with those connection fees. As to Tony's point previously, if we brought on 10 new homes every year, we generate about 1.6 million in connection fees, and we'd also generate recurring revenues. 160 million?
No, 160,000.
Oh, sorry. I was giving you 10, sorry. I was giving you the benefit down of 10 houses every year for 10 years. I don't know why you don't understand my math when I don't give you all the words.
That sounded good to me.
I've been having way too much fun with numbers today. And the recurring usage fees that you would have based on current rates would be about $271,000. So your bang for the buck for those 10 houses, you get the $160,000 up front. What you do with it is the question. The recurring sewer usage that you're getting is about $4,900. So that's not enough. That's 0.3%.
Right.
So that's not enough to really help you with ongoing costs that are, your personnel contracts alone are 1.5% to 2% increases the last few years. So how you use that one-time connection fee, you could decide that you want to split it up over 10 years and apportion it $16,000 every year and set the balance of it and move it out and that's perfectly acceptable. Or you could decide that you want to bring your debt service down and fund it that way. But those are questions you have to decide, because right now it's coming in and it's going right back out onto the budget.
So we have been doing that forever. That's what we've done. But we also don't have to turn the ship on a dime. We have to get a plan in place to get back on track. But your plan goes from, hey, you've been doing this wrong for the last 375 years, we're changing it tomorrow.
No, it's true.
So there's
Trying to right the ship in a day.
So it doesn't have to be all or nothing, but it certainly is. Again, this is what we've been talking about for years. There's got to be a plan that isn't just raise rates. How are we going to cut costs? How are we going to generate other revenue? And how are we going to have rates be a piece of it? One of them is the plan that I've been saying, where we say, okay, we've got infrastructure. Let's give 10 houses a spaghetti line into our system every year and make 160 grand.
And then what are you going to do with that 160,000? That's the issue.
Right. Well, it's not
But we
the
can't
issue
go
is-
there until we create capacity.
Well, that's the whole.
So that's going to be our number one priority.
Yeah.
Before
True,
we
but
have a
10
more
houses
creative.
is
cost reduction plan.
It's very little.
He's already at 104%.
I
You
know.
can't keep saying it's very
No,
little.
but 10 houses is not,
Well-
clearly if we don't get capacity, but I think even Will would say that 10 residences is not a huge burden on the system when we get it down and.
I'm not
No,
so
but
sure
EPA
Will
might
would
say
say
that.
that.
No, at this point we are, but just 3 weeks ago, you said, yeah, you can do a couple more houses, it's not a big deal. Not 3 weeks, but 3 months or whatever it was. Right.
That's when he thought Cedar Point was going to go through quick.
And you also have a capital plan for sewer that's got $16 million on it, not including any major extensions for the next 5 years. I don't know I'll have the new capital plan on Thursday. So that's something that you're going to have to finance as well. If you,
Capital's falling off.
not that much. You have very little capital maturing for sewer. It's, hold on.
Well, this is all the stuff we need to look at. We're not going to decide tonight, I don't think. But those are the type of things that we need to understand. Clearly, rates going up is going to be a component of it. Or I like the idea of the free usage going away also. So you're saying that would generate $300,000 a year?
Yes. And that would impact the average user approximately $124.
A year?
Yes.
So that's the easy solution is right there for the short term.
I think it's the most sensible one.
Everyone's going to take an increase,
Right.
but you will keep your existing rates, the other rates, the base rate and the usage rate, those will remain unchanged.
That's,
No, everyone's going to take an increase.
How would that
And it's
be,
more of an increase
Well,
than
they
a
are the other way, too.
22.7%
how would that
rate
be
increase.
applied, in one lump sum or
Over each quarter.
over each quarter?
So each quarter, you wouldn't get the
$124.
625.
I didn't even know you got your.
I'm not on
being your
sewer, so I have no
use.
idea.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, it doesn't exist in the water enterprise.
What percentage, like, latest, Will, Sean, Kevin, are on town sewer?
Probably 2,700 connections.
How many connections?
85.
Yeah, what, are we at 40%, 38% connected to the sewer system?
About 25 to 30% of the town, roughly 3,080 service connections.
Just curious.
Well, I would like to know, like, what new information would prompt the rest of the board members to change their mind wherever they're thinking right now and wait for 2 weeks, another 2 weeks to make a decision? Is there really going to be new information that's going to come forth?
I've been asking for years, there's got to be a plan that's more than just raising rates. There's got to be a plan, we've got to make an assumption that we're going to get under 104% capacity, right? And then we've got to have a plan that says, here's how we're going to generate revenue. And here's how we're going to try and cut costs, and here's how we're going to there's probably other components that should be involved too. Not that you're not running a good shop there, it's just,
No, and they run a pretty lean shop as is. You've been out there a couple
Yeah.
times yourself and were amazed how many people we had there. The things that we have done is we've opened septic up to other towns. We take septage, and that's the companies that go and clean the Title V systems and allowed to dump the septage into the plant. That's a generator, a money generator for us. We've played with those rates in the past, and, if we change ours, people go to Marshfield and back and forth, but there has been a lot of thinking outside the box trying to generate revenue, but you only just, you have so much you can do with a sewer plant on.
when's the next quarterly billing?
It'll be at the end of October for Section A, second quarter.
I don't know what Section A means, so.
Sorry, the first second quarter billing will be at the end of October. That was an easier way to say it, sorry.
So we do have a little bit of time, because nothing's going to impact until then. So if we get rid of the free stuff,
Yep. You have another meeting or two if you wanted to, for any changes to be effective for the second quarter billing. After that, it wouldn't go into effect until the third quarter billing. So you'd lose half the year.
And how does that impact our ability to proceed on projects that Will needs to get done?
I think for this year, we'd be okay because we're still getting connection fees for Toll Brothers. So we could make up that delta. We wouldn't get the full impact. Well, actually, if depending on what you voted, we'd be fine because we only need $82,000. But if you did something less than the all or nothing option, then we could potentially make up the difference with the additional connection fees if we made them. Our estimate for this year is $190,000. So far, we've taken in $32,000. So.
But the retained earnings is estimated at, what'd you say, 1.1?
A million, yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
I have a little bit different perspective on what's necessary. I think that the priorities are very clear and have been made very clear by the capital investments needed. The plant was, grossly in need of repair, just keep it up to standard, which was reflected in the capital investments in the last few years. Then we know that the number one priority is to reduce I&I so that we can properly service those we already have. Forget about any connection fees. I mean, that's way down the road, is in thinking about revenue from connection fees. It's just not feasible, even if it's, I mean, I'm not even comfortable with projecting 100 homes over the next 10 years, given where we are. We need to make those investments. And so we have to figure out a way to cover the nut. They run lean operations. We've got huge capital coming down the road. And any connection fees that we do have down the road have got to, in my mind, have got to go to paying for debt service and not operations. Because we are going to have, and what's the total, right now on the 5-year plan?
16 million, not including any major extensions.
Right, just for the plant as is. And we all know it needs to be expanded one way or another, whether through I&I or through, or regional service. So, yeah, I don't want to raise the rates, but I think to look for new revenue is not where, we don't have the opportunity to do that right now until we fix those other things.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with that.
Yeah. And, last year we had a presentation where we were looking at 20% a year, given the capital expenditures that we knew we had to have. So this isn't a surprise, it's just awful.
And also, part of it is a function of maybe not looking at your rates annually, and that's something that we should rectify, is look at the rates annually. Whether or not you just choose to adjust them upward or downward, you look at them annually and see what your performance is.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure we did that every single year. And that it certainly would be helpful to know, if we just tweaked it by 2%, we wouldn't have been looking at this 7% increase.
Mm-hmm.
And just alone in here, this, before you was the sludge cake contract last year, and that went up considerably. There's not much we can do about sludge cake. There are some capital projects that will remove more water, so the sludge cake amount will go down, but it's a fixed cost. If we haven't adjusted our rates for even the fixed costs, such as contractual increases for the personnel, as well as things like contract, sludge cake, electricity, our structural deficit just gets worse. So things to consider. Like you said, we have time to revisit.
Just one quick question. This might be just minute, but you mentioned out-of-town septage.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something we even want to consider where we're so close? Or is it so small it doesn't matter at our daily gallons per day?
It's a difficult one to square. We do hope to go after some more septage revenue after the septage receiving project is complete. Open up to maybe another town or two. But we also run into the capacity issue there, where that's extra volume coming into the facility, and if the regulators take issue with where we're at, they might clamp down on that as well.
And it's hard to say to a guy, did you pick this up in Scituate or Norwell? Because they might make 4 runs to pump the septic systems. And
Well, I think Sean's point is, do we get out of that business right away to get our capacity?
Well, we have
What percentage of the revenue is coming in from
as
it?
far as like volume coming in from septage versus revenue gained, the volume of waste is relatively low and the value or the revenue from it is substantial. We wouldn't want to give that up. That's
Similar C&D, it's a revenue generator for the plant, and that's one of the things that we expanded a few years ago to allow that, so that we'd be taking that as a revenue generator, to Tony's point, ways we were looking for that.
Yeah, I mean, the only problem we have right now is
Capacity.
you can stop that coming in. You can't stop anything else coming in.
Oddly enough, we're actually somewhat dependent on our septage coming into the plant. Because so much of our flow is I&I, or just diluted clean water, we don't have the necessary food for the bugs at the plant, and the septage provides that food for them.
That's a detail we didn't want to go into.
Really
but-
wanted to-
Thank you.
wanted to-
At least it was well past dinner before that one got shared.
Thanks, Will.
What percentage of that? What percentage could it possibly be that we get from people pumping trucks in there?
Percentage
doesn't-
volume or percentage BOD? Volume, very low, I think it's like 1.5% or so, 2%. Could be lower.
But it's concentrated. It's very concentrated.
You need to go to a chemistry class.
We are open for tours, the haulers are in every day.
Been there.
But I think it's, to Tony's point, that some of the alternative revenue sources, it has a flip side to it. We saw it in transfer
Right.
station, we're seeing it in sewer.
My point is, if we can not be at 99.8 and be at 98.8.
Yeah, what's the cost of
It may not
the
be an
regulators
option,
coming down on us, you know?
you know.
Yeah, but that 1%.
And
is
rates
going
have to go
the
up to cover
99.
the revenue side.
Right, I don't think it'd bring us down a full percent if we stopped them coming in, and we still have to, as
Well, he just
Sean
said it was
said,
1 or 2%.
we'll confirm that.
Part of that might be Scituate residents.
A lot of it's Scituate residents also.
Doesn't, you can't say no to that, can you?
Yeah, you can.
Sure, they
They can
can take
go
it
elsewhere.
elsewhere.
Yeah.
Because it's a septic.
They should go to Hull, where they have capacity galore.
But one of the issues is, as Will said, we do need that.
We need the revenue, so we
Well,
need to know what that
We
delta
need
is.
the food and the revenue.
I know, but we need less to have the regulators shut us down or fine us or tell
That's
us.
the only faucet we can turn off.
The septage revenue last year, we took in $245,000. Our budget for our forecast for fiscal '20 is $328,000, so you'd have to fill that gap with something else.
Well, once we get I&I done, then it would be, turn it back on.
Connections, right.
That's just something to consider.
Until that I&I comes on, that project gets completed, you're in a tight spot for the next couple of years. So,
We know.
I'm assuming we're moving on?
No good news.
Does everyone agree that we can postpone this for a meeting and think about it and see if anybody watching this
Comes
has
up with any great ideas?
If it's a bake sale, I'm not going to the sewer treatment plant for it.
We do have a good cook down there.
All right.
Okay, so water
As long as
enterprise.
it's not going to hamper their ability to do anything in the next couple of weeks. I don't mind waiting.
It's not going to be built at the end of October.
True, and whether it's, these two items for transfer station and sewer are in the special town meeting warrant that is before you, but you haven't finalized that yet. So you still have a meeting where you could strike them out, or they could be tabled at town meeting if there isn't going to
You
be
mean the
funding for
capital
them.
projects that are on?
No, there's operational budget.
Oh, got it.
So, water?
Must
Okay.
be.
So water enterprise, the driving factor for the increases in rates has been, for the last several years, the investment in infrastructure. Every 1% increase to the rates is approximately $44,000. These projects, as they've been voted, we talked about with the board what their impact would be. So right now, there are 4 main projects: the $1.253 million for the emergency water treatment plant upgrades, the $4 million for the design and engineering of water treatment plant and SCADA upgrades. The 1.25 was approved in the special town meeting last year in November. The $4 million was approved at the April 2019. The $8 million for the green sand treatment facility at Well 17A, which was just recently approved and is ongoing. That's an approved Mass Clean Water Trust loan, which means that it's will be financed at 2%. And then the $800,000 for the design and engineering of the Hummerock water mains. The $800,000 for the design and engineering of Hummerock water mains, that's currently on hold. That design and engineering contract, so we don't need to accommodate it. Plus, there would be some retirements in the water enterprise that could potentially accommodate that, depending on where we cited it.
Is that to raise them?
No, it's to design to replace them.
We know we had a lot of leakage down there, and one of the things we're doing is putting the PRV valves, the pressure release valves down there, and Marshfield's also made some improvements to their meters, so we're trying to see if our loss rate goes down significantly enough where we wouldn't have to replace everything, because we know that's a huge cost.
Annually, we've been Marshfield's, that's not going to help our capacity.
No, that's Marshfield's water that we're
Marshfield's
taking
water,
from there,
yeah.
so it would be directly affected on our rates.
But our annual bill to from Marshfield is about $400,000, so it's a big operational hit. So if that project was going to help us in the long term. The $4 million for design engineering, again, not something that's recommended to be put into the rates because that's still dependent on the water study that's ongoing. There's a $3 million water pipe replacement project that's proposed for the November special town meeting. If that were to move forward, it's not recommended to be put in the rates because it's not an approved project. But that type of project would likely have an impact of 4.7 to 6.3% on the rates, depending on what financing vehicle was available. So it's come up before about the Clean Water Trust. Why don't we finance everything through that? Because we don't get accepted. So the $22 million project was rejected by Clean Water Trust. The $800,000 design for Hammerock water mains was rejected by Clean Water Trust. The $8 million green sand filter was approved. So you don't know if you're going to be approved or not, and there is a cost to apply. It's not an application that we can do, it's something that we have to pay a consultant to do for us. So that's why we have tried in the past, and it's up to them how they want to structure it. We also don't control the issuance of debt. So when they decide they're going to issue debt, if you have spent money, you get incorporated in a pool, and tough luck for you if you have a debt service payment. You just need to make that happen. So right now, the recommended estimated debt service for the 1.253 emergency water treatment plant upgrades and the $8 million green sand facility, which is ongoing currently, it's going to be going out to bid?
Bidding in November.
Okay. That would have a 15.2% increase on the rates. So you could choose not to do anything with the green sand filter at this time because it is going to take about a year to build, but you are going to have to reflect it in your rates, and you have other projects that are going to have to be reflected in your rates as well. Water does not have a lot of debt that's maturing because a lot of this recent investment is 20 to 20-year debt, so you just have a lot of layers that are just going to be out there for decades. You have some retirement, which can take smaller projects, but nothing for the bigger projects.
Why wouldn't we consider staggering that then, and amortize that rate increase over a couple of years to cover the green sand facility? Or 2 years,
So let's split it up. You could, but you're also going to have...
it's not as much of a burden on...
You're going to have the $4 million, and if you approve that $3 million project, you're going to have that. That's also going to have to be brought on. So you certainly can. This one, you have a little bit more flexibility with how you structure it because the debt service hasn't been brought on yet. We just don't control when it's going to be brought on. We brought the comparison of the annual water bills. We had it for the sewer bills as well. Right now, we're number 3, and if we were to raise our rates by 15.2%, we would still be number 3. There's a big gap between 2 and 4. So that's where it is. Cohasset and Hingham are the number ones because they're they're Aquarian water. And then Cohasset, for their own water department, is even higher than that. It's over $1,000. So it's just confusing if I list 2 Cohassets. But you definitely want to be Aquarian if you're in Cohasset. The rates changed from Aquarian in November of 2018, and Marshfield's rates are as of 2020. They just changed their rates. And
that reflects the 2020 rate?
That's the 2020 rate. Some of these people haven't changed their rates for a long time. So Kingston hasn't changed their rates to 2011, but they are looking to change their rates potentially because of investments they're going to make into their plants. Pembroke, it says currently that they're studying their rates. So that will probably bring forward a rate increase depending on what they're doing, see how substantial it is. And this is based on an average usage of 7,500 cubic feet. There's also, besides the rate increase, there's a lot of standalone fees within water that we want the board to take a look at. One of them is one that Becky had brought before you from the Water Resources Committee about the damaged meter replacement. It is too low at $250. Right now it costs $234.61 for a new meter. estimated $25 in fittings and 3 hours of labor, that's $336 as a cost. So we should adjust that rate. The recommendation is to at least $350. I gave you a couple of local options to see what other people were charging. Abington Rockland charges $350, Aquarian's quotes the meter cost. The fire sprinkler and backflow fees have not been touched through several rate cycle changes because they're set fees that just didn't get considered. So we're just looking potentially for a $5 increase on those. They're not big money makers, but if you look at what the other agencies are charging, Abington Water is charging $100, we're charging $25. Clarion is charging $75. It's obvious that these haven't been adjusted for a long period. The question about whether you want to add a fee for meter removal and reinstallation, that's a lot of labor that goes into that, especially down in Hummerock. We're talking about possibly adding a $25 fee to reflect the labor cost involved in that service. Right now, those agencies, and these are the agencies that actually had those rates published, it's $50 on and on. They're called turn-off, turn-on fees for Abington Rockland, and Aquarium was $65, plus Aquarian also charges you $65 to turn the water back on. So $65 put the meter back in, and $65 turn the water back on.
Our biggest fear on that is people be doing themselves and doing more damage to the pipes than if they didn't do it. We know we don't get a fee, and we know there's costs associated with it, but at least we know they're being done right, and people are at least calling us as opposed to trying to do it themselves and breaking meters or breaking...
what about not doing it and then having freeze and burst?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So Abington Rockland Joint Water Works actually has a fine for that. They charge $300 if any non-water department personnel touches the water line. So that was how they got around it. So it's something to consider. We don't currently have a fee, and that's the reason why we don't have a fee. But should we have a fee because of the actual labor costs involved with that? And then the final one is to consider whether or not we want to add a fee for final reading. So right now, if you call in for a final reading because you're selling your home, they'll go out, so there's immediacy and labor involved in that. We don't charge anything. Cohasset charges $125, Marshfield charges $40. So this is a special service that you're requesting, and you want it to happen immediately. Not you necessarily, usually it's the realtor, but... So those are some of the fees that we wanted the board to consider as well. They're not major money makers, but they haven't been looked at. It's something that the board should look at. Whether or not they decide to make any changes at all, it's up to the board's discretion. So now that we've run 52 minutes over our allotted time, I do apologize. You know I love to talk about rates, I just rapture.
It's never a short conversation, and nor should it be. Well, Mr. Chair, can I start a conversation?
Go right ahead.
I mean, I would propose splitting the green sand facility debt service over, 2 installments, because if we did that, it would bring the increase only to 9%, which will be a little bit less of a burden, and then revisit it next year. So that way it's not a 15% increase. That would be the first observation that I would like to consider.
Well, do we have to vote this tonight? When do the water bills go out?
Same as the sewer bills. So you have until the end of October.
So I would suggest that we all get a little bit of time to digest this, and let's not start from scratch, but we'll just plan on voting them next meeting.
Just one question.
Yeah.
The page before that identifies how we would split the rate increase. The $3 million water pipe replacement is those dead ends and...
A lot of it's a 2-inch galvy that we talked about to get that. Also, we are trying to incorporate some extra hydrants, and a lot of the work we're going to do is over in the Utility Road neighborhood where we have a lot of 2-inch galvy, and we know we have very poor transite pipe. We'd like to do some replacement over there also.
I thought that's what it was, just double checking.
And that's if that project, if you keep it on the special town meeting, it's before capital planning right now, and then if it were to be passed, that would be the type of impact it would have.
So my thought on the projects is, I mean, my main thought of water projects that need to be done right now is quality of water. So this thing in Hummerock, unless you tell me it's going to pay for itself in a year or two, it's not helping the quality of the water, no, it's just.
And that's why I put it on hold.
Right.
We noticed we had high losses of water. We were being charged up to 40% losses in some areas from Marshfield. So, and we're paying $400,000 a year to Marshfield. We said it would pay for itself in about 8 to 12 years. Under those circumstances, we would push hard for that. But with the new pressure reduction valves, and if we can get everything going and dialed back, we may be able to save that just by installing a $30,000, $40,000 valves.
Right. And then the SCADA system, I don't know that that's going to increase the quality of the water. That's just going to allow us to maintain and understand the flows and breakage and stuff.
It'll stop the residents from the water tower calling up to say the water tower is overflowing, and we go, okay, and change, stop producing some of the.
But it's not just SCADA upgrades, it's design and engineering of a
water
a water
treatment
treatment
Water
plant, a
treatment
new water
plant.
treatment plant. It's not just
Well, I don't know, yeah.
software.
And again, that's contingent on what comes out of that water study.
When's that due back?
Technically, we figured we would have the results. In our updates, I believe we say by December. We're hoping sooner, December, January. We're hoping to get them, the draft results a lot, sooner, so that we can start looking at that.
So my point was, I'd focus the capital, it seems like you're doing that towards water quality as opposed to.
And that's what we're doing. We're holding off. We're not jumping in saying we need to design a new plant or we need to do anything, but the money's there in case that comes up. One of the things that's starting tomorrow is a sanitary sewer, not sanitary, water inspection of the plant with DEP, and, they're reviewing that tomorrow, and we'll get a lot of results from that over the next 4 days, when we get an idea what we're gonna get, and that report might take a couple of weeks.
And these aren't recommended in part of, I don't know if you saw that, the heading, what you see here, that's
No,
not.
I know.
Okay, I didn't know if you saw that.
No, I'm just telling you what mine.
And their capital plan from last year was, there's 23 million, not including anything that happens at the water treatment plant. That would be separate and apart. So things like, to Tony's point, the Dolan well field build-out, looking at the West End additional water sources. Some of those things are on there as well. And we'll have the capital plan, or at least a feel for where it's going at the next meeting as well.
And raising the reservoir, is that still?
There is a capital project already approved for that, whether or not it's still feasible. I think Kevin can provide an update.
Yeah, the next plan would be going into permitting in completing engineering for it, and we were talking to Brad about possibly doing an MVP grant and applying for that, to fund that through grants.
Good.
We weren't using any.
The engineering of it?
I thought that was already done.
Yeah, that was my article, I remember. I thought we were in the permitting
Not all,
process.
it's the permitting, it'll be the permitting for the wetlands, because we're gonna be we're gonna be flooding wetlands, so that's the loss of wetlands. So there's additional permitting and, there'll be some engineering involved, and but the plan is done.
Another 30 days of capacity.
Capacity, correct.
There's probably been at least 5 grants involved with this as it's gone through the varying phases of design and permitting, with the last one being an SRF seawall and dam repair fund grant.
So we're getting any closer?
Yeah, they are, are they at 90% now?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm getting saddened to know that I know that.
Draft environmental impact report on all the agencies now, substantial. Which is, we want for public review, there's a copy of all that.
But we thank the board for their time tonight. Sorry that we ran over on a busy night.
Any other questions? Okay, so we'll end this and we'll put it on the agenda for next meeting to vote. Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Thank you.
staying. Can I just ask one question? When you come, before next week, when you come back, can you give us that breakdown of the percentage of sewer revenue that comes from out-of-town septic and that whole Delta conversation, so we have that information?
I do just want to note, last year when we raised the rates, the septic rate had been increased, and we saw a dramatically adverse effect on our septic revenues. We essentially scared away our larger septic hauler for a good period of time.
Going down to Plymouth, I think it changed by a penny a gallon.
Half a cent.
Half a cent a gallon.
Yeah, and I'm not
going to
suggesting any change there, I just would like to see that revenue component as a percentage and where it all falls in. It's probably on your
Well,
retained
as you
earnings
said,
report.
the EP, that's one of the first things that the DEP is going to come and say if there's a capacity, right?
Potentially, they're technically minded, they understand our process depends on that to operate. So we anticipate a little bit of leniency in that category as opposed to other areas.
Yep.
Where they may not be so lenient. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll be quiet.
Okay.
Hour behind.
The water filter policy.
More than happy to put that off if you don't want to spend time on it tonight. It's up to you.
Well, hopefully it'll take a minute and a half.
I doubt it. So the board had directed the water department, Kevin and I, to come up with a policy where residents who had chronic brown water in the town would bulk purchase filters, and someone can come in and we would say, here's a filter, go put it on your house. As we sit here tonight, we are not recommending that course of action, and let me explain why. First and foremost, if the town gives out a filter, there is a possibility that becomes a point of use for the water system, which means that every one of those filters we give out that is put in a house, the town must go out and add that to our regular testing protocol and test the water in every single one of those houses, because we have provided the filter. This came up several years ago when they were putting in the filtrated water systems in the schools. They actually had to change the law to take those off the list of things that we had to test on an annual basis, or a daily basis. So we can't get into these people's houses to do these tests. We don't have the capacity to do it, and it's just way beyond anything that we could possibly do. Secondly, if you Google whole house water filtrations, Home Depot comes up with 573 hits just on Home Depot. You have sand filters, you have paper filters, you have charcoal filters, you have UV light filters. For us to pick a particular type of filter and say this is the correct one for you gives the town some liability if something happens. And also, we have to worry about what if it clogs, who's responsible for the filters, what if the plumber puts it in wrong and it breaks and the house floods, are we responsible for that? Is the homeowner responsible for that? Is the manufacturer responsible for that? What happens if we specify a certain type of filter and it doesn't fit in your particular house? Do we then go out and buy you another filter? Or are you just out of luck? So there's a whole lot of issues in doing a filter that I don't think we can surmount. What we would ask at this point is that the board put this aside and let us continue spending money on what we're doing, which is to improve the entire system with our flushing program. As I said earlier, we are anticipating or hoping that we will have the whole town flushed before next year when we get to the high use season, when the brown water calls start coming in. We think that is going to make a major change in that system. So we would like to wait and do it before we implement this. Also, we just spent a lot of time talking about water rates. How many of these do we buy? How much do we give out? What does it cost? That either has to come away from things we're already doing, or we add it onto the rates to pay for it. If the board wishes to go down a road of this type, we would recommend a straight rebate type of system. I talked to a plumber in town, and he puts in AquaPure, and he puts in watts. Those run a couple $100 for a filter, plus his installation charge. I spoke to a local builder who put one in a house of his. He said it was around $800. So that's how we came up with a rebate of around $500 to people who had chronic brown water, which we've tried to define in the policy. It'd be cleaner, it'd be easier, it'd be up to, so if you buy a $150 filter, we're not gonna give you $500. We'll give you $150. If you buy a $2,000 filter, we're gonna give you $500. And the prices range anywhere from about $35 to a whole house filter to $2,000, $3,000 and up for a whole house filter, depending upon what you're trying to filter for. Obviously, the lower cost ones get most of the sediment out, but the water can still be discolored because it just doesn't filter down to that real small level. So that's where we were at in it. The policy in front of you is a rebate policy, but it would be our preference if we waited and waited to see exactly what kind of results we got. As I said, we're going to post some of these videos of the flushing and what we're getting out of the pipes. It's very good results, or if you want to look at the other way, it's very bad results, because we're getting a lot of material out of these pipes. The water's coming out very brown when we open these hydrants, and by the time we flush that hydrant, it's coming out clean, and then we move downstream to the next hydrant, and we do it again. And as this, we were pushing out from that standpipe on Man Lot Road, just heading out to the town and flushing. The guys are out there from first thing in the morning to the end of the day, and that's all they're doing is flushing. It's been very good. So that's where we are on that. And I'll leave it at that for questions, or if you just want to take it under advisement.
Yeah, any questions from anyone?
No, I understand what you're saying. My question would it be just the $500 credit or whatever, or would you consider an abatement based on how many days a month? I mean, and the hard part is for someone to be able to prove, well, I had brown water 5 days in a row, whatever.
Right, people have been told, this board has said in the past, if you have chronic brown water and you want an abatement, you can come in and ask for an abatement. I can't remember whether we've gotten any. Kevin, do you?
Well, I'm just wondering if we put together some sort of a form for people to fill out online that would make it easy for them to apply for an abatement without having to come in and sit here in front of the Board of Selectmen to ask for the abatement.
They fill out a form, it goes to the water department, and it comes to me. Eventually, I'm the one who approves or disapproves the abatements.
Well, then maybe we have to publicize that more. I mean, if we already have some way for them to get redress, and they're not taking advantage of it, then, you know.
I mean, the problem there is everyone will ask for an abatement. The policy's in place so that we actually find the chronic, not users, but the chronic people that are being hit with this.
Right, well, I'm not understanding the disconnect between you can get an abatement, but nobody asks for an abatement, when we have all these people complaining all the time about how often they get brown water. And it just seems to me as if we actually have something in place to help them, I don't understand why they're not taking advantage of it.
Yeah, and, part of it could be just the burden of proving that it's chronic brown water. I can tell you anecdotally, Kevin and I have gotten, I don't know how many calls that we've gone out personally to people's houses, that the water's been black for a week, and we go out and turn on the water, and it's coming out clean. I mean, Sean and I went to a resident's house, and when we got there, it was coming out clean. We said we were going to do a certain steps for her. The guys should be out there the next morning to do X, Y, and Z. And we took them off other jobs. We sent them out. When they got there, she said, "No, the water's clean. I don't want you touching it today."
Right.
So,
well, the irony is when Channel 10 came out, apparently they couldn't find any brown water that day. And they interviewed you, and
I had some of the jar on my desk.
Did you say irony?
the
Irony, the manganese.
yeah.
That's red water. Iron's red water.
All right, well, I would, anyone else have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think, I do. I think this is a very difficult policy to implement because there are a number, hundreds, maybe thousands of residents that have had filters in their homes for 30 years. So that's a quagmire, right? So how do you address them? You just say they get up to 500, down pat, because how are they going to prove that they have brown water if they've had a filter system in there for so long?
What the instructions from the board were going forward, not going back.
Right.
I don't know how we would afford
Yeah, I don't
to
know
go
how
back
fair that is.
and give $500 or $200. First of all, they wouldn't have a receipt at this point for what they paid for the system. So will we automatically say, here's $500, and you get 500 people, you do the math. It's expensive in a hurry. And that means everybody else is paying that on their rates to give back to that. So, I mean, this policy is a difficult policy, period. That's why I think I would recommend that we hold off implementing and see what happens with this flushing program. It's the first time in, I don't know, forever that the town has flushed their pipes. I think some of these dead-end streets, it's the first time they've ever been flushed, period. Not to mention the dead-end streets that we're finding where we just can't flush right now because there's no hydrants or there's no flushing gates, and you get 400 feet from the end, there's a hydrant. The last 400 feet, there's nothing. Those pipes have not been touched since they've been in. And I think I told you last year when we did off Country Way, one of the houses, one of the streets, the stuff that was coming out was chunky. that was coming out of the pipes. It had never been flushed in the 25, 30, 40 years that that pipe had been in the ground.
The only way they're getting flushed is through their faucets.
So in those cases, sometimes what we do is we'll go out, we'll pull the meter off the house and try to flush your line out and pull it out. And we do have a couple of those now where there's one or two houses at the end of a line and we can't flush, so when we're done the whole program, if they're still having a problem, then we'll have to go out and pull the meter and try to flush that last portion through their house connection, until we get out there and put in flushing gates, hydrants, and everything else.
And we found some houses where the actual services are gunked up on their side of the street. We've replaced the water main, we've replaced the new water service, and they're still claiming to get brown or yellow water at some time. And what Mark Cloud was telling me today, he found out it's in their service pipe from the street in that has the black, and they take the meter off and try to flush it out the best they can that way.
Comments?
My comment is that I think it is problematic. I think thank you for identifying the areas that we should think about. I think we do need to think about this a little more, about implementation and we have invested a lot in cleaning the system this year, so I think it may not be that bad advice to see how we are in the spring and also spend some time just thinking about the devil's in the details. I think this is a really good starting place. If we go there, I think the rebate's definitely the way to go. But I want to I personally need a little more time to think about how to equitably roll this out. And I'm not prepared to have that conversation tonight, because I have to think about it, quite honestly.
How's it? Tony, I want to thank you for thinking outside the box. I had never given this a thought until you came up with the idea. I probably would agree with Jim, but again, if you are determined to do this, I'll look at it a little further, but to Jim's point, we've done so much in the last few years. Granted, we have a long way to go, but I would maybe just hold this in place until maybe next summer, next spring, if you're agreeable to that. I mean, I
think it's a good idea. I don't mind the rebate component of it. I think we're in a little bit of a open period here. We don't have to worry about it. But come Memorial Day, or at least the 4th of July, so I would like to have something in place for that time period, that it's measurable and it's whatever the plan is. I understand the rebate is opposed to actually having a bunch of filtration systems there. And at that point, we'll be prepared to see what the flushing does. I'm hoping it has greater impact. But I'd like to have a policy in place so when this happens again, that those people, and we don't really know how many people are complaining.
No, but I think we should do it during the 2020 budgeting too, because 4,000 houses times 500, that's $2 million.
Well, we know they're not all chronic.
No, I know, but we don't know how many there are, so we've got to have some sort of projected expense in our budget to cover it.
Right.
Somewhere. I mean, I think it's irresponsible for us to put a policy out there, $500 a pop, and not have any.
We'll have to factor into our rate projections.
Right, which it's not right now in the discussion that we had tonight, right?
Yep. So we did have a significant increase in brown water complaints at the end of the summer. We don't think that was a result of significant increases in brown water. We think that was a result of the fact that we kept hopping on people, you need to report it, you need to report it, you need to report it for our data points. So I think that was a large reason for the increase in brown water calls at the end of this summer, because we did spend so much time saying report it, report it, report it. But again, and it's anecdotal, when we would go out, almost universally, when we would go out on a brown water complaint, there would not be brown water the day that Kevin and I went to the house.
But you don't doubt the residents.
No, we see the pictures, but it's hard for us to.
I wouldn't want someone thinking, sitting at home, oh, he doesn't believe me, but.
Oh, no, if I didn't believe you, I wouldn't go out, Sean.
Yeah, right.
If I didn't believe you, I wouldn't go, but.
When we go out, we're trying to figure out the source. Is it because, their neighbors have automated sprinkler systems? Is that causing it to draw in at 6 o'clock in the morning and then level out at 8 o'clock? And they're getting it when they're going in to take their showers? We look at that and try to come up with a reason why.
you know,
All right, well, it's late tonight, so I'll tell you what, I think, why don't we table it for now, but I would say in the spring, I definitely want to have some policy in place, so when it comes around again next year, that there's a mechanism for people to get relief if they're chronic
Right.
visitors in groundwater visits them. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving right along to the Scituate Beach Commission. Stephen Tripp, an update.
The 820.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm joined here by Paula Ellsmore, also one of the founding members of the Scituate Beach Commission. We're approaching a 4-year anniversary since our founding, so I thought it was about time to sit down in front of the Selectmen and maybe chat about what we've done and where we'd like to go.
Great.
First of all, for the public, we meet on the first Tuesday of every month at the library. We are open to the public, so if you have any ideas or thoughts you want to share with us about these great resources we have in town with our public beaches, please come on in and spend some time with us. First, I want to lead off by saying that we've had some success stories that everyone has had a chance to see. Number one are the mats. Everybody will notice that the access points have been, let's just say, made accessible. We've got some really great stories of folks that might be slightly handicapped getting access where they might otherwise not have been able to get down to the beachfront. And I find that it's been a great project.
Yes.
I have to say, Nancy Fay, who was here, she had to run for another commitment, really took ownership of those beach mats, as well as the rebuilding of the boardwalk at Egypt.
Yep.
And really, front to back, she was really the driving force on getting those programs developed and funded and really implemented, to the point of being out there the days those mats were laid down and positioning them right. So truly a passion on her part and a great success story for the commission. What else do we have on here? Something else we've done, we certainly recognize that there was excessive demand for parking stickers and parking spots for the parking stickers that were sold. So we did make some changes or recommendations that involved out-of-town stickers and the availability. We don't know how much it helped because the demand is still quite high for parking spaces at these beaches. It just tells you how great a resource it is. We have gone to a number of avenues for funding on a few projects. I'll skip right to that part of it where we did a survey within the first 6 months of our existence. We're just really asking town residents, what would you like to see at these beaches? And we heard they wanted fresh water for cleaning off the sand or even drinking. They wanted, obviously, more parking spaces. They wanted shade. What else was there? And restrooms.
Restrooms.
So, again.
Better restrooms.
Something more than a porta potty. So we've gone to CPC a few different times to try and move a few of these target items through. We've had some success, but mostly failures. One that I want Paula to spend a little time on is noted on page 5, page 4, and that would be to provide some shade for the access points, that being where we have the transition from the parking lots to the beaches. And
Right.
Paula, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, these shade structures, I did approach the CPC with them, and they were not at all for it, but that's okay, we're still working on it. But we feel that because of the melanoma that's going on right now with people that are just so exposed to the sun, the lifeguards are out there, and they're just out all day long in the sun. We have some elderly people. We do have people that are with children who want to go to the beach and to just grab all their stuff and walk all the way from the parking lot to the beach. It's easier, we think, if you can just drop them off in a little shaded area, and the kids can be there, the elderly people can be there, they don't have to walk all that way, you can just drop them there and move on. I have researched a group here, it's called Shade Systems. It is actually just 2 posts that sit in the ground, and then you have your shade canopy that comes over the top of it. It's a cool mesh, so it's retractable, not retractable, I'm sorry, you can take it off. If there's a hurricane coming, if there's high winds, everything comes off with a couple of screws, and then it can be put back on again. What I'm here to find out is that, do I have to have a vote from the selectmen to put a structure on public property? That's what I guess I'm not sure. We haven't gone to the rec commission yet to get a line item in their funding, because I'm not sure if it's something that we can go ahead and do without having permission to put a structure on public property or beach property.
Yeah, I believe you do.
Yeah. Okay, so how do I mean, I know that we're not on here for a vote, so do we have to come back and ask for a vote?
You probably don't have to come back, but we would have to, this is the first I've heard of it, so, and I think all of us, so, pitch it to us, and then we'll think about it and
Okay.
go from there.
Well, if I could, the issue of CPC related to whether or not these are permanent structures, whether or not CPC could in fact pay for the cloth part of it, or could we only pay for the structure. There was also the issue of who's going to maintain it, DPW, their amount, the time, and especially Beach Commission does have some revenue through beach stickers. I know there's a lot of claims on it, but I think that's why you got some negative reaction to this particular proposal from CPC. Not because people didn't like the idea, but it was also an issue related to, we thought that every beach should have a 5-year plan so that could be made public, so that people would know, this is what we're doing at Hummerock, this is what we're doing at North Scituate, because not every beach has the same needs. Right, and that's why we're only going for 2 structures, Egypt Beach and Peggotty, because we've looked at the other beaches and there really is no place
to put
for
them.
any of this kind of structure. On the other hand, you don't want the people in Hummerock to feel as though they haven't been treated fairly by the Beach Commission either, which is why, if there's a particular project that is specific to Hummerock. So I think that's where you were getting some different feedback from CPC. And at one point, there was some talk of taking the trusses from the old train camp. That was, so, to be fair. Yeah, I understand. That was something that I had discussed with Kevin.
Yeah.
But that went out because the price point of trying to even refurbish one of those was thousands of dollars.
And I think we all agreed that those beach mats were just a wonderful thing to do.
Right, and Hummerock did get those, and so did Sandhills. There's nowhere at Sandhills to put any type of shade structure.
Right.
So Sandhills is a very different little beach. It's a very small beach. We are hoping to get bike racks for all the beaches that don't have them, including the Lighthouse.
In addition, we're also asking for warning flags. We feel that we can do a better job of communicating across a larger geography on some of these beaches, whether or not it's recommended that we be in the water or out of the water.
Right.
We're seeing a lot of confusion with the sunfishes that are propagating across a lot of these beaches, and it's being called a shark sighting. The harbor master gets called in, they shut down the water, nobody goes swimming for the rest of the day, but there's no way to communicate that it's
forever.
Go or no go, so.
I'm not going.
I mean, these are
I'm done.
3 projects that we feel we would like to get on to the recreation budget, and we've had conversations with Maura, and we're pushing forward on that. I agree with you, we do need to have a broader plan, but again, our core has been around the survey that was taken by residents that said, just give us a place to clean off. What we understood was that we do have a water station at Peggotty, but it didn't operate all of last year. The entire summer, it didn't run. So this year, when it runs, it's on some type of a timing button so that you get a squirt and then it stops. So it's some type of a water saver tool that was introduced, which didn't get a lot of response. We just got the water line installed for Egypt. But again, these are projects that were 3 years in the works to try and get moving, and we still don't have fresh water at the beaches. So again, as a commission, we work hard every Tuesday every month to try and refresh these ideas and bring them back in a way that we can move them forward. But again, just that's what we have. We also submitted a new charge that was updated by the commission. I know I submitted that to you, Karen, back in February. We felt that the previous writing was
A bit aggressive.
a bit optimistic on what our commission could do. So I'll submit that for your approval. Unless you have questions, that's all I have tonight.
So Jim, shouldn't these go to capital point, as part of Recreation's capital plan?
How what they are, how much?
Depends what they are.
Well, the total of the three we just outlined between the bike racks, the warning flags, and the shade structures is roughly $24,000.
But that's not capital, right?
Capital's not enough to
These
be
aren't
capital.
capital.
So they would be,
And that's in
just,
total.
well, they go in the recreation
I think we were
budget.
just thinking rec.
Yeah, that's what I had spoke with Laura Glancy about, and she said that if we could, talk with you folks and we got the go-ahead to go with that, then I would be able to ask her and Nancy Holt to please put that in the line item in a budget.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question? Do we need to reorganize the commission to roll up under recreation as a subset? Because it seems like they're out there kind of floundering with, no financial tethers, no lack of ideas, and,
Right.
You've got great ideas, done great work, but you're kind of hanging out there on your own, right? And,
Learning as we go along.
exactly, and that's what happens with the nascent of new committees and commissions, but I wonder if we don't take a look at that so they become a subset of the rec commission, so that they can properly apply for different funding through the
That
town.
would be appreciated.
They'll have some more support when they go to CPC and maybe some more guidance, if you will,
Yeah.
in how to put together your proposal, because that's half the battle, is knowing
Exactly.
all the information that they require.
Yep.
So I would love to see bike racks, and I would love to see warning flags, just as you say, but again, it's identifying the source of funding, right?
That's
How
hard.
much are the warning flags?
We've estimated roughly $3,000 for the full system.
For beach or for the whole
Well,
town?
it involves a signage that would have to communicate the.
Sure.
What the flags mean. Yeah.
But is that per beach or for the
No, for the
town?
total
The
project.
whole total
Oh, okay.
project.
So it's 16 for the bike racks, 8,000 for
1,600.
the, right, 16, sorry. And 13 for the shelter, or the.
And as far as the shade, that's representative of two locations. We're thinking that one location would be satisfactory as a test.
Yeah.
What's it look like? Is it just this plain
It's
canopy?
in the
No, I've got it.
handout.
Another one that,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
it's
That's not the one on the cover of that, is it?
No.
No, no, it's that.
down a
Yeah.
page. That's that one.
Yeah. So it's just two posts, they would be set further back, and then it would just split up.
It's kind of big. Purple one?
This includes, they also include installation from the company.
And are they specific to a beach or a seaside?
You can do them for
was wondering about
bleachers, you can
wind.
do them.
Yeah,
Well,
the
the wind there,
wind.
it's
How
up to
that-
90 miles an hour,
Yeah.
is what the cool mesh topping would withstand. The ones that we chose would be 12 feet by 20 feet, and 8 feet high. And the fabric is very durable, it's not something that you can, destroy.
And
It's
the
also
thought, the thought of that is, I mean, these people are going to the beach. It's-
Right.
It's just a place to stand in the shade while you're waiting for,
Either that, or if there's a, squall that comes through and somebody needs to get off the beach real fast, I mean, the lifeguards have to sit out there if everyone
well, I
runs
guess
to
if
their
someone gets
car.
injured.
Or a drop-off
right in, you
point.
could go
Right.
and-
You're waiting for somebody to come pick you up because you were dropped off at the beach for the day. Just call it a rallying point, but you're not having to be out in the middle of
Yeah, I
the.
hadn't thought of that.
And warranties on them are pretty lengthy. There's 9 to 10-year warranties on the poles, I think 6-year warranties on the cloth.
So, I think the commission has done exactly what we asked commissions to do, and they, researched what people wanted, they've identified them, they've researched, and they presented to them. I think Mara has a really good point, because the thing that wasn't anticipated is, you get to that, you do all of those steps, and then now you're begging to get them financed. So I would like to spend some time thinking about how to merge the two. The other part of it is things like the flags. One of the hiccups is, is that the lifeguard's going to be responsible. Is the harbor master just figuring out the details of, who's going to decide it's time to put up a yellow flag, that sort of thing. So it makes perfect sense to merge those two.
Maureen is in charge of all the lifeguards, and we did discuss with her, how we were going to implement that, and that was one thing that she did say to us: if you want to put flags up, you have to know who's going to put them up, who's going to take them down, who makes the call to put what flag up, and that's,
Right, and so we'd have to, those are really important things, but I mean, you're at the almost at the goalpost on these things.
As for the bike racks, we've noticed that people are leaving their bikes on the mats. So they're bringing their bikes to the beach, they're laying them down. That's a health and safety problem. That's a tripping point that is going to create a problem down the road. So to have a designated location for people to leave their bikes away from the beach, back in the parking lot, or at a point where it's not going to be a tripping spot, I just want to make sure, I just restate that that's an important consideration as well.
Have you reached out to the VOTEC about maybe building the bike racks?
No, not yet.
No, I didn't even think.
They built the ones at the library, Sean pointed out.
Oh, the shark thing?
Yeah. So we don't want that beach.
Shark bike rack?
Big sunny face or
Turtle.
something.
Something kind.
I didn't say that. Might be an
Nice
idea.
going, Sean.
No, I like the,
Great timing, the school year to do it.
Yeah.
we're seeing a lot of community involvement, not to interrupt, we've got folks in town, middle school kids, and some of our
Designing our sticker.
designing our sticker for the parking, but we also have volunteers that are going out with buckets and picking up plastic and refuge on the beaches, just on a voluntary basis. We're encouraging that, and we're spending a lot of time trying to build that message that, to go out there and clean up our beaches.
That's great.
So Jim, what's the next step for them to get these things funded?
Well, you could change the charge and put it on recreation, so recreation's kind of responsible for bringing those things forward. Or just do what they said they were going to do and go meet with recreation and have them decide between the two of them which ones recreations wants to put in their budget for the next fiscal year. Either of them.
Okay, why don't you go to
So what's
recreation?
needed is just go see
See if you can get
recreation.
in the budget, and then at some future meeting, we'll talk about merging.
Okay, but so I don't have to get a vote from you to go ahead?
Well, we'd have to vote it once they put it in their budget.
Okay, I thought it was the other way around.
So,
Okay. Thank
I
you.
mean, we can give you a sense of the board whether does anybody dislike those structures?
Yeah,
Or the
no,
bike
I mean,
racks
I
or
would.
the flags?
If personally speaking, if Beach Commission and Rec Commission comes in and says, this is a great thing, we would want to invest money in, I would be very amenable to that,
I think that's a yes. Anybody else have any issues with I think the one
No, I
thing,
think they're all good
it's hard to
ideas.
tell what it's going to look like, we just don't want it to look.
It won't. No, it's going to be, we're going to do the sand colored posts, and it will just do...
It looks thick, it looks like a real,
Yeah, and all it is when you take off the top of it is just 2 posts, so it's not going to be an eyesore, it's not going to be anything that's going to be in anybody's way over the winter, it's not... Do the posts come out in the winter? No, they just stay right there, so all you do is unscrew the top and take the top off. Well, I do remember suggesting at one point that maybe you could get sponsors to put their company's names on the structure itself, the... What's it called? What?
an oil company in town would like to do that.
Well, and that's the other reason why it needs to come in under a town department, so we can take advantage of government pricing, you know, you probably just went right to
Then you don't
shade
really
systems.
want advertising at the
right?
beach, do you? I mean,
Oh, I don't know.
you don't want it to be ugly.
Got to imagine.
Unless
there's
it's Sean
someone
Harris, of
town,
course.
government
Lemonade,
contracts,
I
these
mean,
types of things.
You know,
Yeah,
it's a beach.
Yeah.
It's not.
sorry, having a side
Great,
conversation.
so-
Nancy.
So
We'll talk to Rick, and then they'll come back to us.
Okay.
Thanks, appreciate it. Thanks,
Perfect.
guys.
Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you for waiting so long.
Don't forget your
Kyle's asleep.
Okay. Now, we are moving on to a Coastal Advisory Commission update.
Frank Lake?
Louise and Kyle?
We have
Oh, and Frank.
Louise and Kyle, John Grant,
And John.
you know John, and of course you know Frank.
No, Frank.
Frank looks tired.
Finally. Thank you for this opportunity. We feel like it was time to give an update. I don't think there's been one for a couple of years. As we gave you in the handout, we are short a couple of members, so we're actively recruiting. We need at least 3 more members because we've had 2 resignations. What we thought we'd do tonight is just tell you what we have been up to, what our focus has been, what we've observed, what our goals and strategies have been, and we have a few recommendations. One thing that happened, I became the chair, I think, in February, so, and I was on the committee before, but we realized that if we're going to be effective at all, we have to really understand and digest all the many studies and grants that are out there, which was a mammoth task. But what happened that was really fortunate is that Kyle came on board about the same time that we thought we better get up to speed on everything, and he had to do the same thing. So we just combined the effort, and he helped us get all the information we needed and take it into consideration, because we didn't feel like we were equipped to make any kind of recommendations or set any kind of priorities until we really knew. So we spent quite a bit of time looking at all the grants and actions that were out there. And one of our goals was to be proactive and not just reactive. I feel like my first year there, I didn't really have a sense of what was going on, and it was just always a reaction, but never anything proactive. So I think that was really important. We also felt that one of our main things was to promote dialogue and information in the community. We felt that was really lacking. So in our observations, one of the things was, it doesn't seem like there's any really good established lines of communication for what's going on in the town. I mean, we heard that repeatedly. It's hard to know unless you really know where to look and study, and so just no way to really learn about things. Maybe on the committee we would learn because Kyle would tell us, but in terms of citizens, it's hard for them to know what's going on. So that's a big observation. The biggest information flow was occasional meetings that were sponsored by consultants. As you all know, some of those studies, there were meetings where they would give information. But the information's always after the fact and not on the front end of what should we be doing and what's out there. So that was a common theme. And then one of the things we heard repeatedly was all these studies and nothing's happening, which is of course not true. But there was a lot of information. A lot of people are saying that they were sick of all these studies. And one of the things that we did was we would invite the different beach associations to our meetings. And one of them was the Downtown Harbor District, and we actually ended up going door to door trying to recruit people to come to our meeting, and that's the common theme was, oh, all these studies. And so that was really, upsetting to us. So we explained to the people that, if we don't do the studies, we don't know what the priorities should be, we being the town. And so basically, we've been working hard to erode that perception in the community. So in terms of our goals, we really felt that closing the communication gap would be our first priority, and help the people in the community see that the town is doing a lot of great work, and they need to understand how the whole system works after we learned how it all works. And there's not really much promotion in the town of all the good work that's going on, so we felt that that was something that we could take on. And people had no idea of the amount of dollars being spent on foreshore protection. I think we also observed that the people don't feel like they're part of the process.
So what we decided to do was hold our own forum to sort of bring it all together. And if you remember the community assessment study from 2018, they had 4 recommendations, and one of their most important recommendations is in your handout, but I won't read it, obviously, but it was basically observing the same thing that we observe, which is that we need to present in a simple format all the work that's being done, all the grants that are going on, and they said the same thing that we just said. There's no easy way to find out what's really going on. And so we took that very seriously and put together a forum, and I know a couple of you were there, we appreciate it. On July 30th, we had a forum at the library. I think we had 85 to 95 people. All of the feedback was very positive. And basically what we did is we started out by just giving a basic, John is a coastal engineer as well as an oceanographer, and he gave like a primer on sea level rise, why we should all care about the coast, which we didn't have to convince anyone, but we wanted a starting point of why we were there. So that was well received. And then we strive to go through the relationship between studies and grants to projects in progress and how the money's invested through the town and through FEMA and all the significant work projects. We went through them one by one, all the projects that are going on for the last 5 years and looking forward. The slide that I gave you summarizes what we really, our goal was that, and I think we were successful because I've heard a lot of feedback that people finally kind of get the point that if you don't do these studies and you don't commission these reports and do the filings that Kyle does, you know, it doesn't help you know what the priority should be, it doesn't get you grant proposals, it doesn't give you budgeted projects and permits and real work. So we went through this whole educational process with the group, and you know, really the feedback was excellent, that they understood it. And I have to say, if Nancy's still here, she was so amazingly helpful. I met with her at least 5 times. The whole money picture is so confusing to almost anybody, I'm sure. What's FEMA, what's town, and all the dollars. And I think we did a really pretty good job, thanks to Nancy, of dollarizing FEMA versus the town and how it's being spent. So every project that we went through the funding, the permitting, and all of that, and gave people a real good bird's eye view on that. So along with our goals and strategies, I mean, that we feel like that was really a big success and met the goal of educating the town and making more connections. We also wanted to share feedback and get input from the town. So what we've also been doing at each one of our meetings is inviting a different beach association to come and talk to us about what their issues are. And we are partnering with Dave Ball and the Coastal Coalition, which is great because he has a massive mailing list and he knows everybody. So, for example, we've had the Minot Beach Association, North Scituate, and as I said, the harbor business representatives. And we just give them like 10 or 15 minutes to tell us what's going on and what they're concerned about. And that's been helpful in our education and what we do forward. And so we're going to keep doing that. We're also told people at the forum that we would have an open meeting at the first 10 minutes like all the other commissions do. If people want to come to the meeting and talk at the beginning of the meeting about what they're concerned about, we would be doing that. Some of our recommendations to the town, to you, are we'd like to be sort of a vetting group. If you're thinking about new studies, we want to be on the front end of things instead of in the middle or the back end. And I think with Kyle on board, it's been a lot easier to know what's going on. But maybe the more we learn, we can actually be a force that can sort of help you decide what's important. I'm not saying we have that knowledge now, but the more we learn about things, it'd be great if we could be more proactive and make recommendations. But minimally, we want to be involved in the very beginning of whatever big decisions are made about more studies, definitely for studies, because like I said, there's a lot of negative input about all these studies, and I know they're necessary, but we like to be sort of a vetting group for the town. And the other thing that's really happening, it's already happening, but one of our recommendations is to make sure residents are always represented in any of these new studies and grants, and the truth is that they have been for the last year. So we have a Peggotty Beach project, we have the Scituate Harbor, the Long-Term Coastal Vision, which just was funded, and all of them are very much comprised of residents, which is, I think, a really strong step in the right direction of getting people involved and feeling like they're part of the process. Just to sort of wrap up, and I'm sure you might have questions, we want to continue to sponsor some forums. We feel like that's a great way to connect the community with what's going on. We hope to come back to you and summarize the input back to you from what we learn. I think there's sort of a gap in two-way communication, so we need to get better at communicating what's going on. I mean, right now, all we really have is our webpage, and how do you drive people to the webpage is the big question. We can put exciting things there. We have a lot of good reports. We have an executive summary right on it now that talks about the forum and what it was all about, but I think we have to figure out how to get people to go to that, because we really don't have any other means unless people have ideas for communicating. And I put a picture of our website there. I guess the last thing is, we'd love to hear from you if you have ideas of what we should be doing. We're sort of going along the way we think we should be going, but are there areas that you want to focus on, you want us to focus on, and how can we add value, given where we are now?
Okay. Well, thank you for the summary. I think very concise. I went to your meeting, and I thought it was very well attended. I thought you got good feedback. And then I liked how at the end you opened it up and had the whiteboard out and said, hey, what'd you like, what you didn't like?
Yeah.
So I thought all that was great. I'll open up to the board to ask any questions. There's a lot. I mean, there's no.
It's such a huge topic.
Yeah.
I mean, just getting your arms around it.
Yeah. We spent a lot of time doing that this year, and I think we're in a good place now. We're sort of grounded in what's already happened, where we're at, what's in the future. We did a timeline, as Maura had suggested at our forum, and we put everything with dates, what's happening now going into the next few years, the different grants and projects.
Well, I think you did point out communications is really important, and the one thing I think is that there's so much that goes on in town related to our coast, all departments all over the place, that to have one group be able to summarize what is going on, it's just, to me, that would be extremely valuable. I don't think anyone thinks we're going to solve the problem of, oceans rising, but on the other hand, if people know what is being done in such a small town. Are you part of that harbor resiliency?
That's, yeah.
Yeah. So.
That's one of the grants. And we did say, one of our ideas is do quarterly updates on everything that was in our report, because our report has got at least 6 or 7 different projects in it with specifics. And then how does someone get an update on it? Yes, we can put it on the website, but I think we have to think of other ways to do it, because who looks at the website? Or how do we get people?
Well, you need to drive people, and it's hard to do it.
And we have to figure out how to do that.
Yeah. But thank you.
Thank you. And Louise, it's been great. You've been such a great leader for the commission to kind of collate, all the information that's kind of been shared over the past couple of years, so thank you for everything. What I would like, I think, to see, because I feel with the change in staff, including Brad and Kyle, that I really don't have a sense, I don't think any of us as a board do, what is that next project that we're our eyes are on? I know we just got a new grant. I think, to your point, and a point that a lot of the residents have expressed, it drives me crazy, is we spend so much money on engineering, and then we get stuck because we can't get permitting, or, we've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on different beach renourishment projects for them to go nowhere. So something has to change from an advocacy aspect of changing the process within the state, so that we're not wasting millions of dollars studying a solution and then it dies because somebody at the state has said no.
Well, especially
or
in North
because a
Scituate.
resident has said, I'm not going to give you, whatever. It's very frustrating. Yeah. So that would be one of the issues that I would love to take a look at, just from, a 20,000-foot aspect, is how do we impact that change. I don't know if it can be done, but I'd love to be optimistic, because it certainly is wasting our dollars, and we're not moving projects forward. So I don't know, Kyle, if you want to spend a moment just to talk about the grant that we were just awarded by the state, And, maybe what is that next priority, or what is the commission identified as being the next priority that we should focus on from that list that we have, right?
Yes, so to that point exactly, we pretty much have observed that we can't just rush into projects, the design. We can't rush into picking one specific option and then designing it and then going to the residents and saying, this is what we want. So we got this grant to do a 50-year coastal vision, where basically residents throughout the entire coast are going to form a task force, and then we're going to specifically ask what is the vision that you want and what is stopping us from getting there. And we're going to address the harder, in the first year, it's a 2-year project, but in the first year, we're going to address some of the harder, we're going to let the questions arise that are hard to answer. Like, if you want this, why can't you have this? Like easements, for example, and then in the second year, we're actually going to see what options are actually feasible, and then have the task force. I know this is kind of hard to articulate, but the task force made up of residents are going to be the ones that vote on the options that go forward, instead of, and it's going to be a team, the Consensus Building Institute, an engineer, and the town's taking like an observation role. So basically, the whole first year is to basically get residents to put their cards on the table of what they want, and then we're going to analyze if it's possible and kind of do like this high level of, are the options we're even talking about possible? And then we're going to, the next year, we're going to actually develop implementation on what can actually happen throughout the entire coast. So I know you may have questions on that, but.
I think we get it.
Yeah.
Sean?
Along those lines, when you met with the harbor merchants, harbor businesses and so forth, remember John Danny talking about years ago, sea level rising, and we've seen all the pictures of the Front Street flood and Cole Parkway on a regular basis about bringing the business district up. Any ideas or any discussions, and that's not low-hanging fruit by any means, but
I was actually, I think Ann Burbine was at one of our meetings and floated that.
Start thinking as we, do projects being done.
Sure.
I was surprised that people were even entertaining the concept of moving the business district up the hill. I mean, people were openly talking about that might be necessary in the future. Mm-hmm. And they weren't shocked about it. They were just talking about it.
So at this point, in the downtown heart, so we have a bunch of different things going on. That coastal visioning process is going to be launching in the next month, but the downtown harbor resiliency master plan is already underway. And so far, we've had different focus group meetings, which have consisted of us meeting with town staff in one focus group meeting, business owners in another focus group meeting, residents, committees. So, and like what people want to see is entirely different. So if you ask a business owner what he's looking for, his focus is keeping in business, and like a resident wants to keep their house, whereas a committee or somebody else might not be as inclined to care if you go up the hill or not. So what we're trying to do right now is overlay everybody's data and look for synergy and solutions. And so it's very early on in the Downtown Harbor Resiliency Master Plan process. It's going to take 2 years pretty much, and finishing next June. And we are having our official community, our first public kickoff of this process, October 29th. So I just booked the community room on Jericho Road. So I'm going to be looking to really get the word out on that and make it like a big event that is well attended. And,
what's the date on that, Kyle?
October 29th at 6 p.m.
Mr. Chair?
I wanted to, more what you were saying.
One second, I'm just going to let.
Karen's going to jump out of her seat.
I'm so excited about this. No, I mean, this this work is so important, and I know that you know we're working on the master plan for the whole town, and this will also inform that. But on October 22nd the master plan is having a public meeting specifically on resiliency. And to be able to, that's 2 opportunities in 1 week for people to engage and actually have a community-led conversation about what that plan needs to look at. I think if you guys can help publicize that as well and participate as much, it'll be at Gates and probably 6:37, I don't know the time, specifically on resiliency and the master plan. One question I had from you is, in the conversations you've had, people get, maybe we have to move the harbor up the hill. How has the community responded to possible retreat scenarios? Have you had feedback from people on that?
So we're doing a separate study right now, specifically just completely different than all those grants at Peggotty Beach. We got $35,000 to do a managed retreat feasibility study at Peggotty Beach. Residents approached Brad, asking him if it was possible to, basically what is possible. So it's really hard to give a specific answer on this because it's so emotionally heavy. But what we found is that people know that things need to happen. They initially wanted to move back and up. There's a piece of town property behind that property, so it was explored as an option, as one of the options. And that was, from a regulatory standpoint, there's probably at least 10 different environmental regulations that will prevent that from happening, even though it's potentially less impactful than what exists today. So that right now, we did a land analysis, regulatory analysis, and that proved, and this hasn't been official yet, but right now it's looking like that would be very complicated. So then the next options that we're exploring are, buying out, things like this. And when you get into the conversation, and this is just preliminary observation, when you get into the observation of into the conversation of buying somebody out, specifically at Peggotty, it seems like they would be more inclined to wait it out. And what we've seen is, and what we've heard, is that to be bought out today, would be like a 4-year process through submitting to FEMA. Whereas if we got damaged tomorrow, we could submit a claim and we'd receive that money in a week. So it's hard. So separately, I'm working with MAPC and a couple different people to try to push a buyback program and make it more efficient, so that is an option. If retreat was something that the town was interested in, a separate area where there wasn't such an environmental sensitivity, I think the residents actually at Peggotty want to move back. They want to retreat, but it's hard, So that's where we're at in that process, and we're hoping within 2 months we'll be able to present those results to you guys, so we can come up with a recommendation moving forward. But the positive is that the residents did come to us looking to retreat, so that's incredibly rare in the Commonwealth. So we're not saying no, that you can't move back yet, but we will be providing a document that says to move back, this is what would have to happen. And I think that's going to blow people's mind, even the regulatory agencies. So
Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you all for coming in. We've got these 2 dates, the 22nd and the 29th, were relative meetings for what you guys are doing. And, keep up the good work. It's a tough topic. I share the frustrations of many where it's, the projects are almost too big and too expensive to happen in a timely fashion. So you do some groundwork on it, and then you think you're going to have a beach, up at Minot, and then you don't have the $50 million to spend on sand. So it's hard. You're hitting your head against a wall a little bit,
Yeah,
but
I
it's
mean,
all
I
good
think we'd be
conceptual
doing
stuff.
everyone a favor. I think you were going there more. If we could figure out a way to do minimal upfront work, get community input before you sink a lot of money into the engineering and the permitting. I mean, there must be a way to get some consensus before you spend all the money.
Yeah, I mean, on some projects, it's not consensus, and on most of the upfront money, we're getting grants for it. It's not coming out of the town budget, but it's, I know we had the issue at Hummerock where they kind of flipped. But there are other projects where there is, it's just, okay, how do you fund it now? And it's big ticket items that, a town budget will never be able to sustain. So you look for state, it's too big for state, you hope for federal, and it's just unlikely, so. But it is all stuff that has to be done, it's gonna happen, at some point in time, we need to have some plan and process for the events of the next 50 years. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Chairman, if I could, the next, the 9:10, really will go with the Lawson Green discussion, they're related.
Okay.
So we could take that as one when we talk to Michael. The next thing I think that anybody really is here for will be the 9:40 discussion, so maybe we could take that now, and then the rest of it is my stuff in the Lawson Green project.
Sounds good. So you want to do the 9:40 one now?
So the Hadley Road fence has been a long saga. You have in your packet, you were sent copies of the letters that have been sent to the homeowner on Hadley Road. To be brief, a fence was erected. That fence blocks the view from the neighbor's driveway. The neighbor went to the traffic study committee, asked them to review it. They did. They found that the fence constituted a hazard. The neighbor can't see when they pull out. We've spent the last year sending letters and trying to communicate with the owner of the fence that the fence is within the public layout and it is causing a hazard to the neighbor. It needs to be moved. Something needs to be done. It wasn't until the last couple of weeks that Karen actually was able to have a dialogue with her. I think the result has been there doesn't seem to be any desire for the neighbor to move the fence because it has been brought to us as a hazard. We have to do something about it. You are the road commissioners, so you would have to make the determination that the fence needs to be moved, at which case I would probably have counsel go into court to get an order to move it. I still would not use the self-help remedy that we could go and take the fence down ourselves, because we're going to end up in court either way if we do that. So I would rather have her go to court first, and then it'd be all nice, neat, and tidy. But there's no question that the fence is in the way of the neighbor, and the owner of the fence has, to say the least, been less than cooperative dealing with the problem. So it is now in our lap that we have to make a determination to have the fence removed, and then I would have counsel go.
So we've all read all the material, we don't need to rehash it. The only thing I'd like to bring up is that by doing this, it costs the town hundreds, thousands of dollars to...
It'll be in the thousands of dollars if we have to go to court, yeah.
So it's thousands of dollars to get this fence taken down, which is, to me, just unnecessary.
It's my understanding, and Officer Billings is here, that the traffic committee said you could lower the fence and provide sight line without moving the fence, and that is also met with basically no response.
Is it the big 8-foot white?
Yes.
Okay. Just wasn't,
So if anyone disagrees, just to keep us moving
a lot
here,
of fences in that.
is everyone fine with Jim going, getting a court order, and getting then the ability to take it
So
down?
I'd like just the board to take a vote to have council take action to have the fence removed.
So moved.
So moved. Second by Mr. Harris. Further discussion? Anyone in the audience? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, guys.
On that
Okay.
tomorrow.
So now we'll go back to the 910 item.
So the 910 item, if you want to combine that with the Lawson Green, it's the same thing. Basically, the town has, and Michael is here from the Lawson Green project, but the town has put up money from the Community Preservation Committee to fund this project. If we take that money and we give it to the project as a grant, it becomes taxable under the federal government. So there is a way that we can do it. It's almost like a closing for a home loan. But rather than have the town do their own whole process, what the Global Participation Agreement says is Mass DOT or Mass Docs program, the state will handle all the paperwork on behalf of the town, and we don't have to get involved or have an attorney or have closings. We just sign off at the end, and the state handles the whole thing. It's routine. We check with council. Council has no problem with it, so this would authorize me to execute the agreements and participate in the Global Participation Agreement on the Lawson Green project.
So, just so I understand it right, so the project, instead of giving you the money where you would have to pay some sort of fee, tax on it, we're going to go through this vehicle where you get it at a less of a...
Right, so there's two things at play. One is that if you treat, because the way a tax credit project is financed, it has to be a taxable entity. So anytime you receive money, that's a taxable event. So what the state has devised, and this is kind of the practice across the country for affordable housing projects, is to loan that money into the project on a long-term basis on a deferred note. What the Mass Docs program does is allow basically one council to represent all of the subordinate lenders on the project. So the state, Mass Housing, DHCD, and other lenders that would participate on these projects. So instead of having to have additional legal costs, the idea is that you have one note and one mortgage, and that you're basically, by doing that, you have one closing and you save. It's just an efficiency, and they're all boilerplate documents. So the town is...
You planned on doing this from the onset?
Yes, it's well, I mean, I hope the town would participate in the Mass Docs program because it's very efficient and, it reduces your legal expenses.
But we have to just make sure that we could use the money in the manner in which they want to use it. We can. And again, this is just a paperwork thing at this point.
Any questions?
No.
Have a motion?
Move to execute the Global Participation Agreement in order for the town to participate in the Mass Docs program.
Second.
Second by Ms. Curran. Further discussion? Seeing none anywhere. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it is unanimous.
So as long as Michael's sitting to the table, we might as well move to the old business. Everything else, I think, is mine or Lorraine's. The rest of the
So we're going to old business 950 Lawson Green water and sewer connection fees. So we talked last meeting, was it, or 2 meetings ago, about you coming before us and the connection fees that we were going to charge you for these two entities so your project can work.
Right, so basically the issue is under the prior, the project can't afford the sewer and water privilege fees. I mean, it's just, at the current rates, at the previous rates, it would have been $635,000 in additional costs to the project. I didn't include that in the budget submitted to the state because I would never have gotten the project funded, because you can't have that high of a privilege fee. The state's not going to fund a project that has a substantial connection fee essentially in place. And that fee would basically equal close to 12% of the project's construction costs. So that's a prohibitively expensive, for an affordable housing project, expense. So what I'm seeking tonight is for the water and sewer commissioners to sort of come to an agreement. I have an amount in the budget. I have $120,000 for all of my utility expenses in the budget. That includes gas, telephone data, electrical, and water sewer. And so I don't have a lot of capacity to accommodate a substantial sewer connection fee. The best I can probably do is something between $60,000 and $80,000 for both amounts. I mean, that's all told, all in about $80,000, and that will require me to borrow more money from to cover the cost of the utility, those other utility expenses, because they're just not budgeted.
Well, it's a good thing those two enterprise funds don't need any money.
I know, I heard that. Well, I'm not asking for nothing. I'm coming here in the spirit of cooperation because
And everyone can speak up further, no, but we've already invested so much in this project, it'd be kind of silly for us to hit you with a bill that would allow it not to happen. So from my perspective. So we'll have to come to some sort of compromise, I believe. Anyone want to start the conversation?
Well, I just want to say that I wish that this had been known to the town before we got the project started, that the town would have to invest more than we initially thought. That's just the reality of it now. And I hope that going forward, that somehow or other this is understood by towns, that they're using these mechanisms, that there are more costs associated than you think. Having said that, I don't think it would have stopped us, but it's unfortunate that now we do have these two enterprise funds in dire need, and they're being asked to,
Well, I
take
think
less.
you also would have run, though, into an issue. You were on the CPC, I wasn't here at the time, but we'd basically be taking CPC funds and giving
to
it to
pay
water
for
and
it.
sewer.
Right. Well,
I think some people on the CPC may have a philosophical disagreement with that. So the ability to get that money would not be a matter of course.
no, and all I'm saying is,
If we had known, we could
invested
have at least
trust
tried.
fund,
Yes.
That it was
we
a $2
invested
million
trust
investment
fund
instead of-
and CPC money, and now we're being asked to contribute more. That's my only point. But it's obviously a good project. Just depends on what kind of a haircut we're going to take, right?
Anyone else?
Is the, just for clarification, because it's not in the backup, again, I know I have it probably in my bag. Is it to waive them all completely? Is that what we're looking at?
No, he's willing to pay $80,000, so I think you could,
Sorry.
and Nancy might slap me in
Late.
the back of the head, set the water and sewer connection
done that
fees
already?
at $80,000, said fees to be distributed in discussion with the water and sewer superintendent. And then Kevin can decide who gets what.
Okay. So that's the cap.
No,
Sean?
yeah.
Down, Sean.
Just, how familiar are you with this town as far as who's on town sewer? I mean, we heard a little bit earlier tonight about 30%, 25% are on town sewer. There are people who are afraid to put shovels in their ground to do a Title V test.
Right.
They're afraid if they do, they're in failure. So, we had residents in here a while ago wanting to tie in neighborhoods that have been here for 50 years. Not only, and don't get me wrong, this project would be an awesome project. A great location, everything about it. But not only are you asking to jump the line, and now you want a reduction. I don't see how we can even have that discussion. I'm sorry, I don't care if I'm all alone. People have been limping along with systems that are in failure, and they may never get sewer. We're at a capacity. And then we have 40B projects, we have no choice. Maybe we're probably not gonna have any choice in this one. But like to Karen's point, I mean, maybe we were misled. Maybe we didn't think far enough down the road that this was gonna happen. I just, nothing against your project at all, but, if everyone in town was sued and it wasn't an issue, that wouldn't be a big deal. We held up the Drew Company for a while because we said we need help with infrastructure, and then they went and got creative and got this Mass Works grant and so forth. I don't know, unless I'm missing something. So 30 units, $80,000, $1,000 for sewer, $1,000 something for water, and they're connected. Am I missing something?
I think you're missing the component of what it costs to keep this project affordable and actually to put affordable housing into Scituate. And it is a cost to our town, but it's also a driving need in our town as well, to have affordable housing units. And that's the only way in which they can stay whole.
Right, I get that.
In order to provide that to our residents. I don't disagree with you, it probably should have been called out up front. But I think having senior affordable housing in this town is incredibly important.
Yeah, I mean, Steve, it's impossible for folks to get into the existing places we have now, so there's definitely a huge need for it.
There's a huge need for it, and there's a huge underserved population of people that make too much to qualify to get into Central Park or Lincoln or Wheeler, and the Lawson Green Apartments fill that need, and it serves the lower tranches of the affordability in the 30 and the 60% AMI, and the entire 30 units are affordable, which is very unique for a lot of these 40Bs that come down the pike. Most of them, they just try to get by with the minimum 25%, and that's that. We really worked hard to get the numbers to work so that it was 100% of the units were affordable, and it wasn't just at the 80% or just squeaking into affordable, but it was really helping the people in Scituate that needed help to be able to do it.
Okay, so Scituate residents only, or am I being a snob by saying that?
Well, there's a local preference initially.
Oh, yeah.
You're permitted to have a local preference initially.
100%?
I mean, as part of, you can have
You have to qualify.
You have to qualify.
I don't know how this works, but I'm just thinking, all right, the retired,
School
local
teacher,
person,
yeah.
and I'm just trying to figure out a way that when we go down Front Street in the coffee shops and we see that person, we can say, this is what helped me make my decision. So what Steve just said, it's helping me. I appreciate that.
So there will be, since these units are going to be very sought after, 6 months ahead of the completion of the project, which we're hoping to get in the ground at this point in December, and do, have a 12-month construction period. So 6 months prior to that, we'll create a lottery system with the housing authority, by which people can pre-qualify themselves and enter into the lottery, and there'll be a preference and a weighing scale for initial preference for Scituate residents. Thereafter, it has to, because of fair housing laws, anybody.
Okay, right.
But basically, we'll be working directly with the housing authority to establish a lottery to get folks in, given the demand.
But you see what I'm saying?
No, I fully understand. It's when you're looking at these numbers, and you're looking at building a septic system, that would, if we were to have gone that route, we would be encountering, we would have been able to capitalize that a little bit differently. But it also would have, required a different land use, land use on the site. So that would have factored into it. We'd be then creeping up against the tower to have their leaching fields, et cetera. And that might have been controversial with historic folks. So ideally, the reason why the site was originally, I think, put out bid by the housing authority was that it had all the services on site, and that made it economically efficient to develop affordable housing. Clearly, affordable housing, the burdens to entry in the town are very, very high, just due to land costs, and to the extent that you can, you want to limit your utility costs, and that's why, it being located on existing service lines is so key. It has gas. Gas is a big component of this. The reason why these fees are high is because there's not going to be a master meter. We want to, we want to consider conservation to be a big component. I could conceivably come to you and say, this is all one unit, so to speak, and under the existing master meter rules, I could, get it grandfathered in. But that's not what I'm trying to do. What I want to have, I want to have individual units metered so that the residents are cognizant of their consumption and usage. Because what happens, it's like sort of like the college kid who has the dorm room, he opens the window all winter long, and has the heat blasting. That's the kind of thing we want to avoid, with water consumption. All of the appliances we're putting in will be low flow. The building will be LEED certified. So we'll have tons of water conservation techniques in place. So we're hoping not that these, yes, will be 30 units, but the water consumption, I think, is going to be much, much less than you would see with a single-family 4-bedroom house, a 25,000 square foot house. So I think our consumption will be much, much below that. We're going to have rain gardens that, will self-irrigate using rainwater, et cetera. So to the extent that we can, we think that we'll be limiting the impact on the existing capacity.
Karen?
I think Karen articulated it perfectly. It's that it's an identified need. It's a good project. It's been well vetted, and we're investing quite a bit into it. And I also agree that, it wasn't, we knew what the construction costs were going to be, that it should have been a factor in it before this point, but at this point to pull the plug doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, construction costs are escalating dramatically. So just between when we priced this out in January of 2019 to now, where we just got our bids back this past week, we're looking at about a $600,000 cost overrun. We went in with about $240 a square foot. Our initial bids came back at $250, $260. So it's a considerable, obviously there's a lot of horse trading and value engineering that goes on, but just in terms of, escalation, the project has to occur now because it just starts to fall apart the longer we wait to get in the ground. And so we're moving rather urgently to get to a closing so that we can have a shovel in the ground in December, and because otherwise it doesn't work.
Yeah, Sean, I think you have a great point. I hadn't really thought of it at that point because it was such a good project and being done so interesting. The component, how many acres? Because we gave you the land, right?
So that's the parcel that is included with Central Park, which the Housing Authority bought from the town in '82.
So how many acres is that about?
The parcel
Five or
subdividing, I think, is 3 acres.
So yeah, it's about 3.2 acres.
And how much did CPC give?
CPC gave 1.9, and the Affordable Housing Trust gave 600, of which came from CPC.
So the town has invested over $3 million and 3 acres of land, which is probably...
2.5 million.
Right, 2.5 million
and
plus the 3 acres.
650 grand.
That's total. No, what he was saying was the Housing Trust money came originally from CPC. But CPC allocated 1.9 million, and then the Housing Trust voted to 600. So that comes up to 2.5, plus whatever the value of the land was.
Well, let me finish. The utilities is 650,000. The hookup fees that we're not getting.
Yeah, I wasn't.
Yeah, so that's where I got 3 million.
Okay.
Plus 3 acres of land is probably worth $500,000, So the point is, there's an investment of 3-point-something million in 30 units. So we're essentially paying $100,000 a unit for affordable housing in town, which is probably not what we thought. Not that we wouldn't have done it, but it's just probably a number that we hadn't really thought that that's what the investment.
But it's also affordable. Stephen likes me when I say this, forever. So you're buying future affordability, right?
And I recall at one of those early meetings that we attended, the Affordable Housing Trust, when you try to buy a single-family house and hold it, the trust, I mean...
Yeah, again, I'm not saying, I'm just bringing up Karen's point, as she said earlier, we didn't have a full grasp of what we were getting into completely, I don't think. And not that it would have changed. I think it's a good project. I think we all think it's a good project, but it would have been nice to know, and not only that, the expense that Sean brought up of 30 people that you jumped in front of the line for, whatever the value of that is, to get the sewer. I never really thought, I didn't know if it was going to be that, or it was going to be a leaching field or whatever. That's on me, though. So regardless of it, it would have been nice to have the full scope of it and not at a meeting when we have to make a decision right now. But that being said, we are where we are. So it sounds like we want to proceed with this. I would ask for a motion, because clearly we've got to get going on the project, not in the meeting.
Both.
So,
There's no executive action.
yes. So if you, Karen, why don't you try and put a motion together and just say a combined 80,000 for the two?
I move that the Board of Selectmen approve a reduction of water and sewer connection fees for the Lawson Green project, so that the total obligation will be no more than will be $80,000.
Second.
Jim, do we need to add anything else to that?
I think we're good.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
He talked me into it.
Oh, I didn't hear you say yes.
No, I did.
So
you know,
5,
He went, eh.
5-0.
I made my point. No, I just, I made my point.
No, it's a big pill to swallow, no doubt.
Yeah, no, I appreciate,
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
let's get
and
the
I-
project done and have a great project in
Yeah.
town, and that's,
And,
we'll all be at the ribbon cutting.
Don't come back,
Absolutely.
Michael. No, just kidding. I said, don't come back.
We could have,
I have tried to minimize my asks, and the board has been extremely helpful at every time I've had one, and I really appreciate that. So I need to get back to work and
He's
get
going
this
to
in
go
the
home and
ground.
have a drink.
get 60 happy Situate people in housing.
I just want to break ground, and I
know.
want to put up a sign and have a groundbreaking and have you all there.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
it's looking like it might be December. We might have to rent some heated tents, but we'll be there, you know.
Oh,
Thank you.
don't spend any money on that.
No spending any more money.
We'll just be
bring our
We'll be
gloves.
cold. Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Safe travels.
All right, Jim, Toll Brothers,
Yeah, very simply, the original agreement was that Toll Brothers was going to build a field for us behind the Wampatuck School. We then changed that agreement, and they provided us with $400,000 as opposed to building the field. The bond was held for the completion of the field. Since we're not building the field anymore, we need to release the bond.
did we get the money?
Yes.
Say, where's the money?
Show me
That's what I want to know.
It's an unnumbered Swiss bank account.
So the money, that's what we talked about, a water study, and,
No, this is separate. This is money that was given to us in lieu of the field. It is for use to make improvements to athletic fields in the town of Situate.
Right.
We need to talk about what we want to spend that money
in
on.
Yanni Park up in,
Yeah.
Clap Road.
Clap Road.
Squished.
Okay. I have a motion to release the,
Move that the selectmen being satisfied that Toll Mass Land Third Limited Partnership has performed all of its obligations under the First Amendment to the agreement between Toll Mass Land Third Limited Partnership and the town of Scituate dated July 24th, 2018, related to the ballpark project. Execute a release of performance bond, bond number 2253929, in the amount of $146,589, thereby releasing the town of Situate's interest in the performance bond and return said bond to the surety, North American Specialty Insurance Company.
second by
Second.
Ms. Conley. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
That's a lot of words.
So the planning board and conservation are still holding bonds on the project. So
Yep.
this is no relation to that.
Charter Review Commission charge?
So you would ask at the last meeting to come up with a charge for a charter review committee, not commission. It has to be a committee, not a commission.
Oh, wait, excuse me, point of order. Do we have to read this entire release of performance, this additional document in here?
No.
Okay, good.
Thank God.
Okay, just checking. Okay, sorry, Mr. Chair.
Quite all right.
So I went online and
Would have to go back into it.
looked around finding different charter committees and charter reviews and things like that and tried to put together a charge or a mission, however you want to call it. And really, the point of the committee would be to just look at our charter for inefficiencies, for potential conflicts with state statute or state regulations. I did put in gender neutrality. We all know that that's currently an issue, that we have a board of selectmen with 3 women. So that would need to be updated. That requires a charter change. And specifically, a committee cannot make changes to the method of selection of any elected board, committee, or commission. So that's in there.
Wait, say that again?
Yeah.
The committee cannot make changes to the elected method of selection of any elected board, committee, or commission. That would have to go through a charter commission, which is elected by the voters. So, one of the things I found, though, in almost all the charters I looked at, or the charter committees I looked at, they all had a provision in them for periodic charter review, which I thought was interesting. Every 7 years, 9 years, 10 years, the Board of Selectmen had to appoint a charter review committee to review the charter and make sure it was up to date. So, we're 92, I think, Lorraine, didn't we say, last time we looked at it?
We have one in ours, too.
So, this is to come back up
One
and
what?
get going.
92, did you say?
92 is the last one.
Yeah.
Good. All right, do we want to vote on this tonight, or do you want to wait?
So the only question I had, and just in reading through it, so do we want to include in this charge something like, should the committee feel it's necessary to do to mess with what a commission would be, that they can recommend that, just to be explicit that they have the
I don't
option?
think you need to, I mean, they can just come back and say, here's what we're recommending.
You
We
need a
think you should
commission.
do this, but you need to go to the next level to do this, but this
Okay.
is what we're recommending. I don't think you need to make that explicit.
Okay. Yeah, I went back
I
and forth
didn't think
on
that
it.
there was a whole problem or concern about who was elected or doing away with elected boards, committees, or commissions. I thought it was more, let's look at the makeup of the charter, let's look at some of the, maybe inherent conflicts in the charter. Let's look at gender
Yeah,
neutrality in the charter. Just make sure that whatever's passed since we last did the charter, that we're in compliance with all the regulations and laws.
And did all the was it customary to have a Board of Selectmen on the commission? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, they almost all said selectmen and school committee member.
Yeah.
Almost all of them.
I like that this has planning and finance as well.
Great, thank you for putting that together.
So then the real question would be, do you want the people who are in town government to outnumber the people not in town government, or the other way around? So that'd be if you have a 7 or 9 member board. But I thought it was important, you can't have a committee looking at the town charter if no one understands how the government works.
Yeah.
All right, does everyone feel comfortable voting this?
I do.
Can I have a motion?
Move that the Board of Selectmen, I can't find it, approves the Charter Review Commission charge as outlined by Mr.
Committee.
Many.
Yeah.
Committee, oh, sorry, I don't have, that's right. It says commission on the agenda. Sorry. Move that the Board of Selectmen approve the Charter Review Committee charge as written.
Second?
Second by Ms. Conley. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it's unanimous. And again, comment that the header on the agenda should be committee, not commission.
And then how quickly will we publish the openings?
Quickly as you want.
Mr. Chair?
Lorraine, how long do you, to ask for people to join on it?
As soon as you want, I can put in a press release.
Sure. Within the next week or so? Okay.
I mean, you probably won't get in it has to be in by Friday to be in the Meredith the following week.
Great.
Great.
We can post it on our website and Facebook page as well.
Cool.
What do you want from people?
What do we want from people?
Other than a board and committee application, do you want any other information from people to be considered for a position?
That's a really good question.
We want the resume and why they want to be involved. And whatever past experience they have.
But I think it's
town government, so,
yeah. What about requiring a statement of it, like a statement of interest from everyone?
It's a good idea.
Because it's really important work.
Yeah, this is something different than.
Yeah. Statement of interest, resume, and
And then just a list, we don't want to get over, like if someone's been on other town committees, we don't want to over,
right.
so just what other participation, so we can get a good wide round range of.
Make sure it's some activities and qualifications.
Yeah, well, the resume will say their work experience, but what other town boards they've been involved in.
I'll draft something and send it to you here.
Okay.
Blessing.
The next item is the Veteran Services Advisory Council charge. I read this, but not as thoroughly as I think I want to. The committee is getting together on the 8th or 9th. Is this something that we should have done before, or something we should maybe review with them?
these charge changes,
Yeah,
there's really nothing on here that,
just headers and stuff?
yeah, it's really nothing substantive. It's more
You
updates.
specifically asked me to look into the civilian makeup, right?
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I mean,
Right,
my
and the
specific charge from you was, does it have to be a supermajority or can it be a majority?
Mhm.
So
That's
what
what we
I did
wanted,
was
yeah.
I contacted the state Department of Veterans Affairs, reviewed everything with them. They said you don't even have to have a majority if you don't want it, but I think we want a majority. I mean,
Yeah.
since it is a veterans.
I think you did a great job.
So I just, instead of making it say bylaws, same thing we do with the council on aging, get rid of the word bylaws and.
Yeah.
They were very minor changes, change from supermajority to majority.
Did I see, did we expand the number or make the range?
No.
No? Oh, okay.
Didn't we want to, though? Or are we addressing the issue by removing the?
Supermajority.
The mix of civilian,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. By removing supermajority, changing it to majority.
Mhm.
You took care, you have a perfect board now with everybody you have on. Thank you for doing this.
So the only, to Karen's point, we could, where does it say the number of people? We could put a range.
Well, there is a range. If the existing committee comes back and they want additional members, they can come back anytime and say.
So it says a minimum
Says
of 5,
membership, yeah.
maximum of 7.
You already expanded it from 5 to 7.
Right.
Right.
In the past year, so.
So, I think there may have been, didn't we think 8 was going to be on there at some point?
Well, you always want an odd number.
Yeah.
We have 7
But the,
now.
yeah, moving it from the supermajority, I think, resolved that issue.
So we're good with maximum 7.
I think so.
Can I have a motion?
Move to accept the charter review, oh, wrong one. I found that one finally. Move to accept the Veteran Services Advisory Council charge and publish openings.
Second by Mr. Harris.
Effective immediately.
Second by Mr. Harris again. All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Good. And I just read it over, the red line stuff all seems pretty straightforward.
Good, you spotted.
All the fun stuff.
Awesome. So now we're going to move over to new business unless, I think we got everything else. We've got some one-day wine and malt license.
Move that the Board of Selectmen approve one-day wine and malt licenses to tailor-made bartenders for an event at the Scituate Harbor Community Building on September 21st, 2019, from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. Mr. Chair, would you like me to just read all, or do you want to move each one independently?
Why don't we do them independently?
Okay.
Second by Mr. Harris, all in favor?
Aye. Move the Board of Selectmen approve a one-day wine and malt license to tailor-made bartenders for an event at the Scituate Maritime Center on September 21st, 2019, from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m.
Second.
Second by Mr. Harris, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it's unanimous.
Move that the Board of Selectmen approve a one-day wine and malt license to Ellen McKenzie for an event at the Scituate Maritime Center on September 27th, 2019, from 6 to 10 p.m.
Second.
Second by Ms. Conley. Further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous.
Move that the Board of Selectmen approve one-day wine and malt licenses to Riva Restaurant for an event at the Scituate Maritime Center on October 4th, 2019, from 6 to 10 p.m.
Second by
Second.
Mr. Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It's unanimous.
Move that the Board of Selectmen approve one-day wine and malt licenses to tailor-made bartenders for an event at the Scituate Harbor Community Building on October 6th, 2019, from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m.
Second by Ms. Canfield. Further discussion, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Right. Of the appointments here, do these have to happen tonight? It's just kind of late. Is there any of these?
are waiting
Yeah.
on these appointments. I mean, I think you could skip some of them. Maybe we could just whip through the renewals, or... Hey, want to just do the renewals tonight, get those done?
Well, if you're gonna look at, well, the renewals,
Are these renewals where there's nobody
Whatever you
else
want,
that has
whatever you
applied?
want.
Are these renewals that where no one else has applied?
Yes,
So there's really no contention for the seat?
right.
Yeah. Does that make
You know, the
sense?
first three are just rules, cable television, disabilities.
Maybe we just do that.
You can skip conservation, you can skip council on aging. And then the last three are, well, you already did recreation, so, and then the other ones are just appointments too, Public Building Commission.
Do we have folks that have applied for conservation?
We do not,
Yeah, I didn't think so. Okay.
although I didn't advertise it either, because I didn't have the renewals back, so.
you didn't have what?
Advertise it
Oh.
as openings on that committee. Not that anybody can't apply that's interested, they
Right.
certainly can. Well,
Okay,
You want
if
me to do
anyone,
Well, I'll jump out of order if it, well, those should vote on it.
so cable television, does anyone,
yeah, move to reappoint Tom Clark and Bob DiLorenzo to the Cable Television Committee for a term of 3 years or until a successor is named, and completion of the Conflict of Interest Law online training program is completed within 30 days.
Second.
second by Ms. Curran, further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous.
Move to reappoint Judith Byrne Ariel as the citizen rep to the Scholarship Committee for a term of 3 years or until a successor is named and completion of the Conflict of Interest Law online training is completed within 30 days.
Second.
Second by Ms. Canfield, further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous.
Move to appoint Athena Brodsky to the Commission on Disabilities for a term of 3 years or until a successor is named and completion of the Conflict of Interest Law online training program is completed within 30 days.
Second.
Second by Mr. Harris, further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous, opposed, none? You want to skip conservation? Let's skip conservation, council on aging.
Move to reappoint.
Wait.
Joe-
Oh, wait.
Yeah, let's-
Yeah, let's wait on that one, because we
Let's
have
wait on
so
that.
many new applicants. Do you mind?
I can't agree more.
Okay.
On 8?
Oh, you want to move down to 8?
Yes.
So, the North River Commission,
Move to reappoint Joseph P. Norton Jr. and Adrian Gallagher to the North River Commission for a term of 1 year or until a successor is named and completion of the Conflict of Interest Law online training program is completed within 30 days. Can't talk anymore.
second by Ms. Curran, further discussion? Nope. You two? All in favor?
Aye.
Come on over there.
There's 3 yeses and 2 giggles, unanimously.
You have to do 9. Yeah, very good.
Move to reappoint Carl Campagna, Larry Gilmet, and Stephanie Holland to the Public Building Commission for a term of 3 years or until successor is named and completion of the Conflict of Interest Law online training program is completed within 30 days.
Second.
Second by Mr. Harris, further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Great. Now we have other business, liaison reports.
Can I just say one?
Yes.
You can wait,
Sean
or
has
you can just skim over.
Well, I went to the school committee meeting. They're in the middle of putting their capital planning document together, so that was a good thing. And they're starting up a Scituate Alumni Association to help kids network with Scituate alumni.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, it was a good idea. And I am going to take a tour of Cushing and Hadley schools next week with the superintendent.
Well, good for you.
Thank you.
Maura, anything?
Nope. Affordable Housing Trust, is going to partner with the planning board to get the housing production plan updated. So that's really the juncture, the big exciting news over there this week.
Really quickly mention the Master Plan 1022 Resiliency Meeting. It'll be at Gates on October 20th. EDC is partnering with North Scituate to do the Fall for Scituate outing again. And the library issued its first annual report to the Board of Trustees, which is actually pretty cool, so hopefully we can get a copy of that to look at. And you already mentioned the planning board, so I won't go repeat that.
Sean?
Just the last Shellfish Commission meeting, for the 10th time, they've revised the rules and regulations. So they have a final draft that's going to be presented to the waterways for their blessing tomorrow night. They mentioned they were going to reach out to Laura.
Karen and I are meeting with them.
Yeah. Well, they did, just to hear it firsthand from those guys. It's only about 17 pages, so.
Oh, good.
I have
it. Should be a quick meeting.
Do we have a copy of that on file yet?
No, maybe after tomorrow night, we should.
We received a
Public.
draft, didn't we?
They've been changing it, though.
I don't remember seeing,
It's
yeah.
been marked up.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, that's all I have to report. Any questions after that, feel free to give me a call, I don't know. They've been meeting at least every 2 weeks, if not every week. So, should be interesting to see.
Yeah, just to
I think
piggyback on
Are
that.
they on our next?
Yeah, they are, but this is the third time I've rescheduled.
Right, but they, should they come before us first and then waterways, and waterways, then us, so.
Sean and I went to a joint meeting between the two of them, and it was very well attended. There's a lot of interest in these licenses.
Right.
So much more than I thought. But I think there's 2 or 3 really sticking points that have to be discussed. Otherwise, I think the rest of it is pretty boilerplate for a.
Do they plan on discussing those sticking points tomorrow night between the two committees?
They have.
Yeah, they already had.
This is probably the third time.
Right.
Oh, okay.
So it's mostly money and transferability.
Just like a mooring.
Yeah. And the only other, the planning board committee, which a couple of us went to, we spoke about that already with the school committee and, the senior center, going on to the next step. And it sounded like ZBA that's not. Maybe one of you guys know ZBA, they had a setback question, and it sounds like ZBA thought that's not a ZBA issue, and it's.
Yeah, it goes to Bob Vogel, the building inspector, who's also the zoning enforcement officer, and he's opined that that's not a structure for the definition of the bylaw, so it does not have to go to the zoning board of appeals.
Okay. Super. So we'll get moving on that project, and also start talking about the whole plot of land as well. That being said, anything else from anybody? Oh, wait, we get a few other things. Correspondence?
2 things. Lauren forwarded an email to us from, is this your Kevin? Is this correspondence?
Well, it is the fields coordinator for the town of Scituate.
Okay, that's right. Sorry, it's late, and I'm just reading. So it's actually it's a very nice email about North River Community Church. Identified they do an annual September 11th big event, they call it, in memory of the tragedy, and they chose to perform renovation work at Roach Field in honor of Stephen Roach, who died during the attacks. And they cleaned the dugouts, they painted, they repaired, they painted the shed, they cleaned the field.
Who did all that?
The North River Community Church out of Pembroke.
Oh, how nice is that?
I know, so that we wanted to let everybody know about that.
Nice.
And the other is the Senior Center Second Annual Family Fun Walk will take place Sunday, October 6th at 11:30 a.m. Step off. They leave from the Scituate Harbor Community Building. There's a 1-mile route and a 2-mile route. Bring team, all ages and ability, and pre-register. You get a T-shirt. So the Senior Center is coordinating that.
Great.
And that's it, sir.
And can I have approval of the minutes?
Move to accept the minutes for the September 3rd, 2019 Board of Selectmen meeting. Second.
Second by Ms. Conley. Further discussion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. And lastly, can I have a motion to adjourn and sign documents?
So moved.
Second.
Second by Ms. Conley. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Good night.